Good?
I'm ready.
Ready?
I think so.
All right, let's do it. Cool. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the shoot. Let me say that again. This is going great so far.
So far, so good.
Right here. Experienced man, right here.
Professional podcaster. Welcome, everybody, to the Dream Job Podcast. My name is Riley Warren. I'm joined here by my co-host, Shannon Jacobs, and we're super excited to have our guest here, adjudicator, author, performer, clinician, and legend and director of the Marcus High School Percussion Section, Mr. Kennan Wylie. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Super excited that you're here.
Glad to be here.
You are someone that just epitomizes what this podcast is all about, right? You've been a director of Marcus Percussion for so long. You have such a storied history and so many successes over so many years, so we're really excited to get your perspective today.
Pleasure to be here. I'll help in any way that I can.
Well, the thing that we just want to start with is just, kind of give us an idea of your background.
Let's keep that on the table.
Breaking stuff already.
Sorry.
You're good. No, it's totally fine. Just give us like an overview of your, from when you started playing drums and kind of all the way till now, and just kind of tell us your background a little bit.
Okay, I will be more than happy to share a little bit of that. Well, for starters, my father was a band director, so I was around music since I could remember. Every time I was in grade school, we had Friday night football games. I was always riding the bus with everybody to the football game. So I began playing drums when I was in 5th grade. And I took lessons. Actually, my percussion instructor from the very beginning was Emilio Villarreal.
Oh, wow.
Which to me is Mr. V. I call him Mr. V. And he was my dad's assistant band director for quite some time. And he was really the only percussion instructor in the town we grew up in, West Texas.
Cool.
And so I studied with him all the way, like I said, from 5th grade all the way through high school. And, as I got interested in playing, I think being a well-rounded percussionist is from kind of being around my father a lot because he was a band director. So
right.
I saw all the students play snare drum and mallets, and drum set. So I wanted to play all these instruments. It was always in the cards for me. I didn't just gravitate to one thing. There were points in my, in my formative years where I was doing more snare drumming and maybe more mallet playing and even more timpani. Just to kind of give you an example, when I was in high school, my dad and I would load up a marimba and we would travel around, and I would I would enter all these young artist competitions so that I could play marimba with symphonies. That's kind of what I was into.
Yeah.
And I played with the Austin Symphony and San Angelo Symphony and some different symphonies because I was able to win some of these competitions. I would play some of the Paul Creston Concerto, if you're familiar with that, but that was something that was written for marimba and symphony orchestra. So I kind of got into that. I was obviously into marching percussion the whole way through. My father was really into learning about DCI. This was before DCI was really even big in Texas.
Sure.
We were one of the first high schools in the Texas area. There's a couple others, but not a lot that actually used tuned bass drums, and we marched the mallets and everything. And so I think we had I don't want to say we were ahead of our time, but we kind of were. There's a lot of schools that weren't doing that in the early 80s at all. And so then I got into drum set playing at the time. I studied with somebody else that was a drum set player. And then when I was a senior, we moved to Austin. And that kind of really changed a lot of things because, I was able to go watch live musicians play and go home. I didn't have to travel an hour and a half to go watch a concert.
Sure.
When I was living in West Texas.
Live music capital of the world.
Yes. And so, there was times where my dad would take me to some of these clubs, and I would just sit there and watch these really great drummers play. And did that quite often, really, really liked that. And got into playing lots of timpani. I kind of left that out. And one of the reasons I chose North Texas to go to school, at the time it was called North Texas State. It wasn't UNT, it was that far back.
Right.
And I went there to study timpani. That was my impetus to going to North Texas because Cal Cherry was the timpani instructor there. Cal Cherry was the longtime Dallas Symphony timpanist.
Nice.
And so since he was teaching there, I went there to study with him. That was the only reason I went to North Texas.
Wow.
And after the first year, I realized that I wasn't going to be playing timpani at North Texas because all these doctoral students and grad students who were there I was going to have to be there for 5 or 6 years before I even got a chance to do stuff like that. So, one thing led to another, and I had marched drum corps in the summers. I kind of left that part out. I did march Phantom Regiment back in 82, 83, 84. Cool. And at the time I did that, I was real interested in drum corps, but at the same time I had these other interests. And the reason I bring all this up, this will lead to everybody of why I think my program is the way it is, because of all these different experiences, whether it's marimba or timpani or marching percussion or getting into drum set as well. We'll get to that in just a second. But all these experiences kind of form who I am today. And so anyways, just to back it up one more time, while I was at North Texas, I went there to study timpani, but then I met just so many great friends and musicians and drummers and percussionists. Yeah. Just the list goes on. And I can't tell you how that shaped everything for me from that point on. Yeah. Not just the musicians, but the friendships and the connections and the inspiration from all these people that I met. Some people that people would know, man, the list is so long. I would leave people off, but I mean, there's just so many great players and teachers that came out of a special time when I was there. And so I got into developing the drumline at North Texas while I was there. And we did, the whole PASIC thing starting back in 1984. Wow. We went to Ann Arbor, Michigan, and won our first one. Then we won our second one in LA in 85. Oh, cool. 86, we went to DC and won. And then 87, 86 was in DC, 87 was in St. Louis. Yeah. And those were my first 4 years, and I had to get out after that. And then Paul came in 88, and he took over in 89, and they started kind of going back. Very cool. But I really, obviously, that was a big part of my time at North Texas. As I got out of North Texas and out of drum corps, I did what was called the All-American Disney Band. Right. I don't know if you're familiar with that, if you guys have done that before.
In Florida or California?
I did the one in California. Okay, cool. And so that was another really pivotal point in my development because for those who don't know, that's an opportunity that comes around. Disney comes around and they audition wind players and percussionists at all these colleges across the country, and they select, for percussion, they select 3 drummers to go to California and 3 to go to Florida. And that year I auditioned, I got selected, and I was sent to California. And wow, I mean, it was amazing. I spent a whole summer in California, and I at that point, I had just gotten out of drum corps. So here I was, now I come from paying people to march all day and sleep on gym floors to getting paid to play at Disney World. Right. I mean, wow, you talk about
reversal there.
Oh man, it was a big change for me. And so I eventually learned a lot about where I was and kind of what I wanted to do from that point on. And those experiences led to more drum set playing for me, and to a point where when I was graduating North Texas, I started to play in a steel band that Dr. Shatroma had, and we were playing every weekend. Lalo played in it, Lalo Davila, Julie Davila. We all played together, and we were playing for several years. We spent a lot of weekends together, downtown Dallas, and many weddings. I mean, we played all the time. That's how we really earned our money as we were at school to live. And so as that time passed out, I graduated and didn't know what I wanted to do. I know I didn't want to be a band director because I'd seen my father do that, and that's not really what I wanted to do. I wanted to do stuff with percussion. And at that time, there wasn't any jobs like what we have now. Right. Those didn't exist. Yeah. And so it was either, if I wanted to do this, I had to do it at the college level. And so that's what I really thought I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to be a college instructor. That was my my calling, I thought. And so I went back and got my master's because I was told that you got to have a master's if you want to get a college job. So I stayed at North Texas and got my master's. And soon thereafter, I started taking lots of college auditions and got some offers to go to different schools to teach. But the problem was I was starting to play more in Dallas, more drum set, and I didn't want to leave because I really enjoyed it and I was getting more opportunities. I was playing in a band that a good friend of mine had just left, Jim White, had played in. Jim White is a great drummer. If you don't know who he is, you gotta check him out. He's now, I think he teaches at Northern Colorado. He's the jazz instructor there.
Cool.
He played with Maynard Ferguson, and so he took I think that's when he left to go play with Maynard. I took over his spot in this band called Fingerprints. So that's a band I still play in to this day. I've been with him. We've been together now for over 30 years.
Wow.
And so I didn't want to leave. Going back to the college thing, I didn't want to really leave to go to some small city to do a college job when I was still playing. I was teaching lessons. I was like, this will work out. Well, a friend of mine said, well, would you like to do the drum line at the school I teach at? She said, sure, it's called Marcus High School. I said, where's that at? He goes, it's in Flower Mound. I said, well, where's Flower Mound? Because I lived in Denton. I didn't know where. He goes, it's like, 7 minutes down the street. I said, I've never heard of it. I don't know where it's at. So he took me there, and it was about 7 minutes from where my apartment was. He goes, would you be interested in coming out and kind of working with it? And I said, sure, I'll do that. And I wasn't doing much else on the side, just doing lessons at another school. So I went there and I taught lessons at Marcus. This was in 1990. 1990 was my first year there. Wow. Actually, I think I taught lessons in '89, and I wasn't really doing the drumline, just kind of worked. But when I went there, the thing that I noticed is that they had students, they had a lot of students, and they had the kids were really, very attentive and seemed eager to want to learn. And so I started like a little spring program where we kind of drummed a little bit more. And I got a little more interested in it, so I started teaching all the private lessons and kind of going out maybe 3 or 4 times a week. And I did that in 90 and 91. And where everything kind of went kind of crazy was in 92. That was the first year we went to PASIC. And we traveled to Louisiana, and we ended up winning. I didn't even really know what it was all about. I knew what PASIC was about because I'd done it with North Texas. But the high school thing really hadn't taken off yet. And so we went there along with Plano Senior High School, and that's when Sean Chatroma was there and Mike Hernandez. And they had a very, very good drum line. And so we all went out there, kind of, had a little Texas duke them out down there, and it was in New Orleans.
Nice.
And I will tell you something. This is kind of fast forwarding. I did not know this, but in the audience at that performance was going to be somebody I worked with for like 14 years.
Really?
Amanda Drinkwater sitting in the audience.
Oh my goodness.
Didn't know who she was, had no idea. She didn't know me from a man in the moon. I did not know her. But she still tells me the very first time I saw you was at 92 at PASIC.
Oh my gosh.
When you brought Marcus there. She goes, I didn't even know where Marcus High School was.
Wow.
And I think she was going to school at LSU. And that's why she went to that event, because she said all her drummer friends said, you got to go check this out.
Yeah, for sure.
And so anyways, that's a little side note on that.
That's super cool.
That's where everything kind of blew out and everything started to change at that point, because everything just kind of, the culture started to kind of build at that school. And so I was still interested in wanting to do a college job. So I started teaching at UTA with Mike Varner. And I taught there from 92 to 2002, about 10 years.
Cool.
And I didn't really do the drumline, but I just taught lessons. And in that time I was there, I can't tell you how much I learned from him. I mean, Dr. Varner is a wealth of information. Not only a great performer, but a great educator, and just a vast amount of knowledge that I learned. I mean, to this day, some pieces I had never done with my kids, and if I hadn't have been with him, I wouldn't know how to taught them to my students.
Sure.
One of them was ionization. And I didn't know that piece. I mean, I knew it, but I didn't know it. He taught it to me. He taught momentum to me by William Kraft. These are pieces that I probably wouldn't have been able to do without any kind of help from somebody on the outside. And, thank goodness I was seeing him on a weekly basis, over there working with him. And that was 10 years where I really learned a lot about percussion ensemble that I didn't really know about. And I really learned a lot. I learned a lot at North Texas, but the percussion ensemble program at North Texas, when I was going there, it was more, based on pop ensembles. We did a lot of pop ensembles,
Sure.
which I totally really liked.
Yeah.
But the legit side of it wasn't quite as depth as I was going to get when I went to UTA and spent some time with Dr. Varner.
Sure.
I mean, he knew all of the classics,
Yep.
whether it was Stained Glass, like I said, Ionization, Toccata by Chavez. I mean, he knew them all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he had played them all like a bazillion times.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh wow. I didn't understand the pieces until like talking to him and visiting with him and listening to the groups play.
Yeah.
And they made more sense, and everything just kind of made more sense to me.
Yeah.
So that time with him for those 10 years was real important. I never really went full time to Marcus. I should say this is a great story. I think everybody would. This is worth your podcast, I think. So people
You're in charge. Just talk about whatever you want.
So
We're
people
here
want
for
to
you.
know. So how did you actually get your position? Because you got to remember, like in the early '90s, there still wasn't any positions. The only ones that I knew of that the jobs that we have.
Right.
I knew of Brian Youngblood, who was at LD Bell.
Yeah.
You know Brian.
Yeah.
But he was an assistant band director who did a lot of percussion.
Yes.
And he was, man, talk about inspirational, man. That was when I saw his group play, I was like, wow, very inspired
Yeah.
to want to learn how to teach kids how to do what he was doing. And then you had the guys in Houston. I know that Lamar Burkhalter and Greg Reinhardt, they were
Yep.
down there, and they were having some employment as well. I'm not quite sure if that was through the district or if it was just a very well compensated contract.
Right.
I don't know that, but I know that they were able to sustain a good living doing what they were doing. with
Dr.
one school.
Zader kind of brought them up when he was on with us and said they were kind of the ones who pioneered a lot of
Yes.
the percussion director job as
They
we know
really,
it today.
they really did. So what happened was still in 92 and 93 and 94, those jobs weren't there.
Yeah.
And so in 95, I went to my band director at the time. It was Steve White at Marcus, and I said, I don't know if I can keep doing this. I said, there's guys that I teach at UTA that are doing what I'm doing, then they're making more money than I am.
Yeah.
And we already won PASIC like 3 times. I was like, I don't know if I can keep doing this.
Yeah.
I gotta kind of. He goes, well, if you get the kids to drink more Cokes, you make more money. You go, what do you mean? Well, I was getting paid out of the Coke machine that was in the band hall.
Oh my God.
And so,
Well, breaking news on the Dream Job podcast.
Yes.
That's,
If you want your dream job, this is where I started. So, if I
Inspiring.
wanted to make more money, I had to get kids to drink more Cokes.
yeah.
And I was like, I don't know if this is going to work out. So anyways, at that time, we had a very active parent. The parents were real active supporting, what we were doing with the percussion. Like I said, it really blew up in 92, and the parents and the students, it was really rolling pretty strong.
Yeah.
And so I had the head of the parent organization, we had dinner one night. I said, I can't do this anymore. He goes, well, we want you to stay. I said, well, there's not a full-time job. I can't do anything.
Yeah.
He goes, what would it take for you to stay here? It was like one of those movies. Yeah. He goes, write it down on a piece of paper. So I wrote it down on a piece of paper.
Slide it across the table.
Slid it across the table. Didn't think anything about it. And in '96, or maybe it was the spring of '95. No, I'm sorry, the fall of '95, because we were getting ready to go to Phoenix, Arizona that year. And I went home to my apartment and I opened up my mailbox and there was an envelope and it had a check for that amount.
Oh my gosh.
And every
Wow.
month at the beginning, there would be a check. And that's how I was getting paid.
That's amazing.
And so, in the spring,
I wonder if we can rig up something like that in 2023.
Yeah.
Maybe on the side.
You probably could. I don't suggest it, but at the time, I didn't really have any other options. I was just teaching lessons and just
Yeah.
kind of doing that whole thing. And so I got called in by the principal in the spring. He goes, Mr. Wiley, he goes, I hear you've been getting paid by the parents. And I was like, wow. I said, I don't know where it's coming from. He goes, well, we can't be doing that. I said, okay, I'll tell them that they can't do that. So they got really upset about that.
Yeah.
And this was in April.
I wonder why.
So in April at the school board meeting, unbeknownst to me, about 30 or 40 drumline parents showed up to the school board meeting
Oh my gosh.
and caused quite a scene,
Yeah.
saying that they wanted me to have a full-time job. The next day, Marcus High School, Louisville High School, and the Colony High School all had a half-time positions, percussion specialists.
Oh my gosh.
Whoa.
And that is the beginning of my dream job.
Wow.
Is that cool or
That's
what?
super cool.
That-
Wow.
And so what happened the next year is Dick Clardy was teaching at the Colony, and Dick Clardy's one of the greatest Texas band legend directors you'll ever know of.
Yeah.
And to this day, we still visit quite a bit. And the next year he went. He says, "Well, we got to have this full time. This is not going to work. This needs to be full time." So I was thinking to myself, I don't want to go full time. I just wanted halftime. I don't need full time because I was still playing and stuff.
Yeah.
So they approved full time positions at all three the next year.
Oh my gosh.
I stayed halftime because I didn't want to go full time, but Louisville and the Colony went full time. I didn't activate my full time job until 2003. That's when I went full time for the first time.
See, this is all news to me because I was sitting here thinking, I think most people are sitting here thinking, 1989, 1990, you were the director of percussion,
Nope,
but that's
not
not
at
the
all.
case.
Not at all.
Wow.
Back then, most of us that got jobs were just contracted.
Yeah.
You're just getting, and still to this day, I'm sure there are some areas where they can't afford, they just don't do it that way, and they hire somebody to come do their drum line and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well, and I don't know, I'm sure the guys in Houston, they had a lot to do with it, but I think when that blew up in Louisville,
Yeah.
that's when all the surrounding schools in the Metroplex started doing what we were doing.
Yeah.
And I have guys that walk up to me and go, you're the one that got me my job. And I was like, well, I don't know about that, but if you think so, that's cool. But it's just weird. That story, a lot of people don't know the story of how I got, I never had an interview. I never did anything. You know what I'm saying? It just kind of came about from the parents wanting something for their students. And they, and that, to this day, that still holds a lot of value. When parents want something, they can go to the school board and they can pretty much make their voices be known.
Sure.
And the school board will listen to parents. That's for sure.
Definitely.
And that's how my job was created. And I still kind of was looking at the college route. I kind of even had some offers not that long ago, maybe even within 10 years ago.
Sure.
But I just, I got to a point where I developed the program at Marcus, and a lot of some of my best colleagues that I confide in are college instructors now, and they all said, you don't want to go anywhere. You want to stay there. Your job is better than what I have.
Yeah.
A lot of them were very honest and said that there's just no reason for you to go anywhere because what you have is better than 50% of the colleges in the country.
Oh,
and
100%.
I think that's true nowadays for a lot of high schools, not just Marcus, but there are so many great percussion teachers in our state and our country that do what we do.
Yeah.
And, the college route was there, but I'm very content now. That's not something that I would probably do at this point in my career. But that was where I thought I was going to end up. I thought I was going to end up at a college, and I think somebody had different plans for me, and I'm good with it. I
clearly.
I feel like I don't feel like I'm in the wrong place. I feel like I'm in the right place.
Absolutely.
So you got to follow your heart. You know?
Well, I think a lot of people would agree with that, and just getting to see what you've done with that program for so long. And I think there's so much of what you talked about that's super interesting. But I want to go back to a couple things. The last kind of thing we talked about is just how influential your parents were and your parent support. And I think that speaks so much to your relationship, not only with the students that you taught, but with the parents of them. And so just talk a little bit about how that, kind of grew over the years. And, did you get to, talk with the parents a lot, or, how did you build that community with them?
Yeah, I think the parents bought in when they saw how much their kids were buying in.
Yeah.
When they saw how much their kids enjoyed what they were doing and they wanted to spend every minute they could doing it, they valued that, and they realized, my son or daughter could be doing something that's not very productive, and they chose something that has value, and I want to support that. And so when that became more obvious, then it was, I'm not going to say it was easy, but the parent support just became easier for it to kind of come in, I guess. It was easier because the kids were loving it. And the parents are going to support anything that their kids love. And, I have 3 of my own kids, and I'd say the same thing. If, my youngest did football, and you know what? Whatever they needed, I was ready to support it financially or with my time or whatever, because that's what he did, you know. And so, anytime your own kids have a passion, you want to support that.
Sure.
And I think that had a lot to do with it. And then, the parents got so involved, they would help with events, they would help with props, with planning, and so they started to become closer. They started to meet friends within the parent organization.
Right.
And so I think it became almost as addictive to them as it did
Yep.
the students,
They're bought into.
Yeah. And so they're forming new friendships with other parents that have kids that are doing the same thing. And so it's just kind of weird how that kind of works. But now when a kid graduates, you always look at the parent. What are you going to do now? You know, all that extra time you have because your son's not going to be with us, and you're not going to be, coming to all the games and traveling and serving as chaperone or helping us with props or whatever. You're going to have all this free time.
They've graduated themselves.
Yeah, they kind of go with a withdrawal period too.
Well, we have parents in our program, not a whole lot, but some that have kids that have graduated that they're like, I want to be a bus chaperone.
They still stay around.
Yes. I'm going to help. This is great for me, and I like to be around. I just think that's really awesome.
I still have some. I have a parent that one of my strongest parents. He still comes out and watches us rehearse every now and then after school. Just comes sits there for 15 minutes, and I'm just like, wow, it's great to see you.
That's awesome.
I mean, his son graduated probably 15, 20 years ago.
Wow.
He still comes out.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is.
I think that's super apparent. Anytime we'll talk about the Lone Star Drumline contest, but anytime you're at that event or any other event you guys host, I mean, it's so well run. Everybody's super friendly. You can just tell everybody's on the same page. And obviously there's a lot of work that goes into that, but on the other side of that, it's been that way for so long that the parents just kind of understand at this point. And I'm sure you have great parent leaders that can, kind of explain that to everybody.
And it helps. It does help us because when we have parents that do help, it takes some of the planning, we can kind of give to them, and we know it'll get taken care of, like if you're going to travel, who's going to take care of the water, stuff like that. And those parents do such a great job. I mean, without them, I don't think I could do my job as effectively as at all.
For sure.
There's no way,
Yeah, it's important to acknowledge that we're working hard, putting all the hours, but parent volunteers, man, they play a huge role in just taking off a few of those responsibilities off our backs. And then once that happens, that keeps you kind of, fresh to do the job, teach the kids that we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I mean, the parents ultimately want us to spend time with the kids.
Yeah.
And so if they can find things to take that we have to do that don't involve the kids, they want to jump in and try to do it.
Definitely.
And that's very helpful.
Well, part of this podcast is, reaching out to maybe people who aren't super familiar with the job or just how to do the job at a really high level. And I love that we're talking about parents because this is the first time in the interviews we've had that we've really gotten this far into talking about that parent support. And I just think that's so important for young directors, especially to hear how crucial that relationship is. But let's back up a little bit further because I wanted to talk a little bit about, just give a shout out to Dr. Michael Varner, who you mentioned.
Dr. Michael Varner,
He's awesome.
He is retired.
And Dr. V, love that man. Yeah. I got to go study with him. He's still just a wonderful, like you said, a wealth of information. Just like as far as music people, I mean, his brain is it's crazy.
Just amazing. I mean, he is a wealth of information. To this day, astounds me.
Yeah, and I got to know him a little bit better this last year. We got to premiere one of his pieces at PASIC when we played there last year.
Yeah.
We played a piece called Buddhist Monks, which is a marimba quartet out of his Voices of Himeji, which is super interesting if you've never heard of that piece before. It's really brand new, and the Voices of Himeji itself is, there's 3 different pieces in it, but he has like 8 or 9 pieces that can kind of go with the whole thing, and it all stems from his travels over there to the eastern part of our world, and some of the different things he got to see. So super love Dr. Varner, love everything he's doing.
He's got some nice works. If you're not familiar with his stuff, I mean, he's got some good little library.
Yeah, super cool. Sure. And then kind of the last thing I want to talk about just in your first intro is, we're all about just hearing about different perspectives because, people all over the world are going to listen to this, right? And maybe even other planets. We haven't gotten that far yet, but we'll see.
We're trying.
Hopefully some intergalactic.
More planets.
Maybe other dimensions, But, we've heard so many different perspectives, and some of the perspectives we've heard, they're just some humble beginnings, some similar to yours, but it seems like you really were fortunate and you had a very well-rounded background through your middle school and high school days, which I think a lot of people, wish they had, but I think there's a lot of people, in Texas going through this system right now that have that and maybe don't understand how uncommon that is for some people. So it's just really cool to hear you talk about you were into timpani, you were into drum set, you were doing the marimba concerto thing, you were doing snare drum, you marched drum corps. I mean, that's really cool. That's a cool perspective to have.
I think I think, to some degree, when we become educators, we're gonna teach our kids through our experiences.
Yeah.
And the more that you have, and the more varied you have, your kids are gonna have the same thing.
Definitely.
If all I did was march drum corps and I didn't do anything else, then that's gonna be pretty much the experience that my kids are gonna have as I teach them. If all I've done is drum set, then that's, you know what I'm saying? So I can't suggest enough that if there's people listening to this that are maybe thinking about becoming a percussion educator and you're in college or you're in high school, I would encourage you to get just as much different type of musical experiences as you can get, because all of these are going to help you become a better music teacher and a percussion teacher. I can't. One that comes to mind is I told you that I played in a steel drum band for several years, like 2 or 3 years. But the part about that, I played drum set in that band, and the part that I'll never forget is that I know so much about like Latin music that I wouldn't have known if I hadn't have done that.
Yeah.
Like I can tell you what the drummer is supposed to play in a merengue, in a soca, in a mambo, in a salsa. I know all of that, but I wouldn't have known it if I hadn't experienced it.
Sure.
Yeah. And so it's just so many different things that blow up in my head when I'm working on something or I'm doing something with my students and I get this recall from something that I did a long time ago,
right.
Whether it was a timpani experience or whatever. They all come rushing back, and you can't put a premium on that. It's amazing, and I think that's true with anything. It's not just teaching percussion. It could be being a performer. If you want to be a great jazz drummer, then go listen to all the jazz that you can, and as many kinds of jazz, and then other kind of styles. That's how people are. When they grow up with it, you can hear it in their playing. And I think you can hear it in somebody's teaching when you know 100%. The experiences they've had. Like it's kind of somewhat obvious to me when I listen to other groups. I can almost tell what their experiences are just by listening to their group. Like what that teacher went through, like what they're doing. Maybe not to a exact point, but I could tell a lot. By how they play. I mean, it has a lot to do with it too, because how you play is going to have a lot to do with how
translate
they play.
to how you teach them.
Oh yeah.
That's a good point to make to like collegiate players at this level. Like, be the best player you can be at everything you can be, because that is what you're going to give to your students down the road. Like play in all the ensembles,
play them in all, man.
Be a good drum set player, study marimba, make sure your orchestral stuff's on point, right? Because that's going to eventually translate to the students that you teach. I mean, and that's when we get to the pedagogy part, that's pretty much how I teach. It's the well-rounded percussionist. That's a big deal.
Absolutely,
big deal.
That's awesome.
That's super cool.
So
wonderful. Well, let's get into some of the. We've kind of worked our way up to your time at Marcus, and so I really want to just kind of dive into that. So let's get into that next. I'm going to pause it though, so we can make sure we don't lose anything.
We're going to pause just for a moment.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that just kind of overview of everything, from your humble beginnings all the way until we got into a little bit of the Marcus stuff, but let's keep going with that. So, you walked us through pretty much up to the point where you became a full-time, head director or percussion director. So what kind of happened at that point?
Well, nothing really changed when I became the full-time other than I went to in-service. That was really the only difference. I was still putting in all the time, prior to that. I will say this, that my time at Marcus is really kind of, there's really two major, maybe three, but there's really two parts to it. And the first part was when I was really developing the percussion program. At the time I got there, the band program really was not maybe not one of the premier bands in the state of Texas. Sure. You say it like that. And, I was developing the percussion program to what I wanted it to sound like. And through that, the band director was very gracious about letting me do pretty much what I wanted to do with those kids as far as musically and and take them to have different experiences and stuff. You know, at that time in the 90s and even the 80s, PASIC, which is an international convention, for those who don't know, Percussive Art Society, it used to go from different cities every year. Mm-hmm. And so I mentioned earlier, our first one we went to was in New Orleans. And so we were able to drive to that one's pretty easy. In '94, we went to Atlanta. Mm-hmm. And so I think we may have flown that one. And '95, we went to Phoenix. And '96, we went to Nashville. Wow. And '97, we were ineligible because we won 3 years in a row. Mm-hmm. That was
so it used to be. Is that still the case where you win 3 and because it's kind of different with IPEC, the International Percussion Ensemble Competition, where you win once and then you have to wait 3 years. But if the marching, it sounds like you can win 3 years and then you have to stop.
Yeah, that's
too much winning.
When it was going on, that's the way it was going. So it's kind of, and you know, North Texas and us kind of had the same thing. You know, so some people call it the NT rule, some people call it the Marcus rule. It doesn't matter. But if you would win 3 years in a row, you had to lay out. So '97 was a layout. '98 we went to Orlando. '99 was Columbus, and 2000 was Dallas, and 2001 was Nashville. And so we were going all the time to these.
And going back to like we talked a little bit about your parent support. I mean, that's like, to me, you know, we're going on our second international conference in 2 years, and like pitching that to your stakeholders is a huge deal, you know? And so, but would you say just like the buy-in from the kids just helped you guys continue to do that? Did you ever have any pushback from anyone?
There could have been some silent pushback I didn't know about. Yeah. But I think that the parents and the students that went the year before, well, they were so jazzed they wanted to do it again.
Yeah, cool.
You know, so if those experiences are always positive, then they want to do it again, and again and again and again. Cool. And as I stated earlier, back at this time, the band wasn't really traveling much at all, and they weren't doing competitions all the time. Yeah. So we had the resources and we had the time to do it because and the availability, another big thing. Yeah. And then, so that all went through like the 2001, 2, 3, 4 era. And then when Miss Drinkwater took over in 03, well, then the band started to come way up. And then we won state. We made it to state our first year. I'm going to mess this up, so I don't want to say it. I'm not going to say it because I'll screw it up.
Well, once you get the first year, it's pretty easy because every 2 years after that for a period of time.
Yeah, I think we won state in 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. Yeah. I mean, to this day, that blows my mind.
That's incredible.
And so what I was getting at is there's kind of two parts of my growth at Marcus. Mm-hmm. And in that first part was me developing the program and existing by itself. Yep. You know what I'm saying? And then when she came, and Drinkwater was so gracious and so accepting and so respectful. To this day, you know, she's still that way with me and that program. And she learned how to accept what we did, and she was just, God, I mean, there could have been somebody that came in and it could have been like, you know, just a disaster. It could have been a world war, you know. But she embraced it and built the band kind of through that concept of the percussion. And sure enough, the band took that and built it. And so then you had the percussion and you had the band. And that's what made it such a special time from 06 all the way to 14, is because both parts of the program were operating at a level that I've never seen before for that long. You know what I'm saying? I've seen people do it for 3 or 4 years, but we're talking that was 10-year period just nonstop.
Just going.
And so I learned how to be, I'm not saying I wasn't a team player, but I learned how to accept the percussionist being more of accompaniment. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Sure. And I think I really matured at that point. You know what I'm saying? For sure. Because prior to that, it was all about the percussion, blah, 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 blah. And that was cool and everything. But we learned to be successful in a different kind of way. Yeah, absolutely. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And I thought that was a great learning for me and the students. Yeah. And she was very helpful along the way about embracing us and teaching me how to do it and in a way that was just so respectful. Sure. And like I said, I can't thank her enough for doing that, because that could have easily been a time where, you've seen people where a new director comes in, it's just not working, and it's just blah.
Right.
But it was the total opposite.
Absolutely.
And so I feel like I grew as a percussion educator from just developing my program, but then developing the program to exist within the band program at a high level.
Yeah.
And still be able to do, like, we still had our identity. We didn't lose it.
Yeah, 100%.
You know what I'm saying? And that was important to me. I didn't want to lose our identity. I spent over a decade trying to build that.
Right.
And I didn't want to lose that. And she didn't want us to lose it.
Sure.
And so we were able to maintain that with building up her identity with the winds and the guard and all that.
I think that's really apparent if anyone who's familiar with the Marcus band and the Marcus Drumline. You watch the way that your percussion exists and contributes to the band programs over the last 15, 20 years, and it's different. Would you agree than the way that you guys play drumline shows, right?
Yes, it's totally
and it's
different.
not to say that it's better or worse, but like the way that y'all, add to the clarity and add to the dynamic nuance, without getting in the way of the beautiful sounds that the Marcus band makes.
Yeah.
And then compare that to, like, we're going to get to watch your 2021 HEB Drumline show, which is incredible and just like a tour de force of notes and style and all sorts of really, really cool things.
And that's why we do, we can talk about drum shows, but that's why we do what we do with a drum show.
Yeah.
That's where we get to be ourselves.
Yeah.
And with a band, that's not a drum show,
Right.
That's the band show.
Sure.
And
sometimes we want to make it a drum show.
yes,
We're all guilty of that.
And having a dream job is learning how to get along. Part of the dream job is being able to get along with everybody on staff.
Yeah.
And a lot of that has to do with letting the ego go. You got to let the ego go.
Yep.
And I think that's where, unfortunately, sometimes in our dream job doesn't stay our dream job because our ego gets in the way.
Yep.
And we can't accept, not having a drum solo
Yeah.
or not being the main attraction. And you know what? That's what I learned in the second part of my career, was learning how to, and you can say, well, you already got to experience that. So, and maybe so.
Yeah.
Maybe that I got to do that. I got it out of my system, and then I was able to kind of do more. But it's a different way to balance it.
Yeah.
And I thought that was I accepted the challenge, and I wanted to be able to do it.
Yeah.
I didn't want to not succeed at that.
Absolutely.
And I wanted to make sure.
You wanted to keep doing it.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that when we played with that band sounded like nobody else, and that we could support it and make it sound that way.
Yeah, for sure.
And I gotta give credit where credit's due. It's not just me. I mean, it's also some of our writers. I mean, Tom Hannum has been writing for us for like the last 15 or 20 years.
Wow.
And his writing and the way he fits us, we're like a very great match together.
Yeah.
The way he writes and the way we play, it's just, it goes really well together.
Does he write your drumline shows too?
No, he doesn't do our drumline shows.
Yeah, I'm sure you're going to get to that.
Yeah, we can get to that, but that's a little different. But with far as all the stuff that we did with the state years, that was all Tom's writing.
What about the front ensemble? Does he do front ensemble as well?
Well,
in
Tom,
the band stuff.
Tom, what he'll do, if you don't mind me telling you, Tom, is that Tom will kind of sketch out the pit parts.
Sure.
And then he usually has somebody. We have 2 or 3 people that he feels real comfortable with.
Yeah, absolutely.
That probably a lot of people don't know that are great arrangers.
Yeah.
And so there are people that have studied with him at U of Mass. And so, there's 2 or 3.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
Come to mind,
I think that's pretty common. You know, that's awesome.
But it works for us. It always has. So we, if it's not broke, don't fix. If it's, if it's not broken, don't. There's no reason to kind of try to mess with it. So
absolutely,
we've been really successful. The drum show, if you want to know how that goes about, that's
well, this is a perfect segue because I think since it came up, I think this is a good time to get into it and watch it. And we'll actually do a live reaction.
Okay, sure.
So if you want to just kind of add your feedback to it, but give us a little intro of your, the Marcus Drum Show that you guys have been doing for so long.
So we started doing drum shows back in '90.
Yeah, right.
And I think you're going to see a video. Maybe we should show them the other video first.
We can definitely do that.
Because what you're going to see is the growth and the just where it's come from.
Sure.
And I should set this up first because some of it's real embarrassing. But
no.
You know what?
I did send
it to him, but when you asked to send something, I thought, maybe people should see where this started.
Yeah.
Like what this was like back in the 90s. And if you'll notice, the very first video you see, I'm conducting.
Yeah.
And that's the way we did it back then.
Yep.
We conducted, Brian Youngblood conducted his groups. We all conducted because there was just something connected about that. And I probably conducted my groups all the way up to about 2000, and then I kind of stopped after that point.
Sure.
But so you'll see a lot of that. You still will see movement. I mean, we did drill to everything. We don't have a lot of room to work with, but you'll kind of see, we do uniforms. It's the early version of WGI.
Yeah, definitely. There's a ton of WGI influence in this.
Yes.
Or maybe this influenced WGI
Yeah,
in some ways,
because
too.
WGI didn't exist when we were doing this.
Right, yeah.
And so it was really kind of just weird how this all kind of came about. So sure, go ahead.
Well, this is super cool. So this is, and I want to also preface this, that this is a drumline, or this is a YouTube channel run by the Marcus Drumline alumni.
Yeah.
So I think that's another thing that just speaks to your longevity and, relationships with your former students.
And so what this is, what you're going to see here is the first 7 minutes of this video. They put a video together for me. They did a 25-year anniversary, which would have been in 2015.
Yeah.
And so they did we had a big, it was really special. We had a dinner and stuff. I didn't know all this was happening.
Yeah.
And so they showed this video at it, and so there's a lot of montages. You're going to see stuff from as early as I don't think there's anything from 91, but I think you'll see some stuff from 92, 90, all the way up to maybe even 2000, whatever.
Cool. Very cool. Well, let's check it out.
Yeah. Should I come over here to check it out?
Absolutely. Yeah. You can
Okay.
slide over. And
I don't want anything to feed back here.
Yeah. And do you want to live react to this too, and kind of give us some, or do you want to just kind of watch
Sure,
it?
I'll talk it through if you want me to.
Absolutely. Yeah. So here we go.
Live. I've never talked over this before. This would be funny. Wylie 25. That's a long time. So this is just the beginning there.
Star Wars reference.
Yeah, Star Wars reference.
So
That's
can
a
these
friend
guys
of
do
mine.
anything yet? I mean, besides sweat?
I don't think so, Big Sir.
Did we pick too hard of music, or I mean, they can't really march in step.
No,
This was
that's
the
not
very
problem. It's
beginning.
just
This was like in the
knuckleheads, man,
90s.
knuckleheads.
Bass drums don't even
Early
love that
90s.
hat. Wayne.
Some great video editing here.
Please welcome from
The great Fred Sanford, everybody.
Amazing.
Rest in peace, one of my dear friends, Fred Sanford.
And there you are.
That's me. This is New Orleans, 1992.
So Amanda's in the crowd there.
Drinkwater is somewhere in the crowd, yes.
Quite the prop there.
Yeah, we got that from the Vanguard. They did the switch where they went through and they would switch to uniforms. Ooh, we switched the color of our drums.
Oh wow.
So we had these covers on.
That's incredible.
And so we didn't do it here, but we do it later in the show. You're not going to see the whole thing, just
Sure.
part of it. This is Caprice Espanol. This is but you know what? The quality's still really good for 92.
Awesome.
I think this is prior to Kevlar too. This is 1993.
Look at those
in
high steps.
This is me with the high step. This is in Houston. Well, Lamar Burkhalter brought his group, so we were all in Houston.
Wow.
And Plano was there. That was a big deal. This is 1994, Atlanta, Georgia.
Love it. Yeah, this is what we know is indoor now.
Yeah. So we had
Love
we
those
had
bass drums.
congas down front. We had all kinds of stuff going on.
Love the racks.
Let's see what else we got. This is 1995. This is Phoenix,
Wow.
Arizona.
Woo.
This is the first time we came out with 8 tenors or 6, 8 tenors. Yeah.
That's a lot. It's a lot of quads.
Back then that was a lot. Yeah.
There's a lot of lugs to tune.
Yes.
See, those bass drums are a little bigger than we use now. This was in '96. Great show. This is a Russian show. And I think, if I'm not mistaken,
I
that
can
is
see
Marty Hurley right in front of us.
Wow.
The great Marty Hurley, who I studied with, actually.
Yeah.
He taught me how to play traditional grip.
Look at those bass drums.
1985. This is still the same show. Going crazy on the racks. This is 94. It's back to Atlanta. I guess they're doing some rack stuff here.
Yeah.
93. They're going back to the racks. Everybody's throwing in the racks.
They
The
pick all
racks
rack
were
moments.
big.
Yeah.
92. That was the first. Yeah, that was our first time out.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
That's crazy.
With a score of 92.5, Marcus
And this, I love this compilation. Is that Ralph?
Yeah, that was rough Hardiman.
Marcus High School.
That's so awesome.
That's crazy. Yeah, a lot. And then I think these are some. Oh yeah, check this out.
This is amazing. I love this.
Now we
You
have
gotta talk
an
about this
extension
once we're
to our
done.
band
Yeah.
this evening. Please welcome the Marcus High School Drum
The Marcus
Corps.
High School Drum Corps.
That's right. So she came to town in '95, yeah, and they wanted a drum line, and we said, sure, we'll play.
Yeah.
And so we
We'll say
rehearsed
no to
with her.
Shania Twain.
Yeah, this was crazy, man. So they're up there killing it with Shania.
That's amazing. Were you backstage at this point?
I was on the side, yeah, checking the whole thing out.
Did they do more than one song, or
No, just this one song. Yeah. But you know, anytime this was I think this was a live video, so they were recording this for video.
Oh, cool.
And so, because you can actually dial this up somewhere and find it. But this was done at Texas Stadium.
Nice.
Remember that? The original Texas
Oh,
Stadium.
yeah. Did that kid know that he was going to play on his drum?
I don't know if they knew anything. But yeah, that's funny. This is Orlando. Oh, we brought the samba band on this one. So check it out. So this was with all the Cerdos. We had gotten our Brazilian ensemble going a couple years before this.
Cool.
We can talk about that later, but
Definitely. Love the backdrop.
yeah. This is one of my favorite shows in 2000 Dallas. This is a Christmas show.
Yep, there you go.
This is this
Pre-
was
pre-cadets.
downtown Dallas.
Convention Center?
Yeah.
Nice.
2001. This was my all freshman snare line. And this was in Nashville. Yeah, Nashville. Ooh, 2005. I have no idea. That's in Plano somewhere. It's not. I don't think we went anywhere in 2005.
Big old tarp.
Oh, this is 2006. Oh, this is the Western show. I think we went to PASIC in Austin on this.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, you're still conducting there?
Yeah, still,
2007.
yeah, I guess I'm still kicking a little bit.
Love the drill here.
07, this is just a local thing. I don't think we went anywhere. Because this is 08. This is another PASIC here in Austin.
This is my freshman year of high school.
Yeah.
So you guys see that. Like a Lone Star Drumline.
This is 2009. This was, I think this is just a regular drum show we did. Notice we start doing more in uniform now. 2010. This is the Four Seasons show, yeah.
Shout out to all.
Yeah, shout out for Valdi, for sure. This is one of my favorite shows. This is the Door Show, PASIC 2012. This is all Dave Hallman's.
Yep.
Arranged by the great Paul Rennick. You know, some shows have more props than others.
There you go.
This is
Perfect
a
example.
2013.
Sailor show?
Yeah, Sailor is our show. I tried to work on Accelerando this year.
Yeah.
Just all kinds of crazy. All right, yeah. So you can fade it out there.
Yeah, sure.
So
Absolutely. That was
you know
incredible.
what's interesting in watching those when I saw it, because I don't really stare at those much. I when you asked me for video, that just kind of popped up on my feed, and I thought this would be kind of cool. Is there's two things that I notice when I listen to all my students play, is that the sound quality is still as good then as it is now.
100%.
That's one of the things. So I'm really happy about the way they play and the sound that they get. The thing that's changed a lot, obviously, is the drum tuning and the
heads
the heads and the
equipment.
writing to the point is a lot different now. But it's the one thing that hasn't changed is the sound quality.
Yeah.
Which I'm really happy about that. Well, like when I go back and listen to it, I was like, that the sound quality is still really good.
Yeah.
I'm not really talking about maybe the cleanliness, but just the way the sounds are
The
getting out of
approach.
the instruments.
The approach is the same. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm really happy about that.
That's super cool.
But it's really weird. We got into doing these shows back. We started like in 1990 with all these drum shows, and And people ask, why do you do it? And I think we alluded to it, that this is kind of their time to do their thing.
Yeah.
You know, I think if we just, you know, we don't do WGI, and we can talk about that. That's not because we don't like it or want to do it. It's just that doesn't fit with our percussion ensemble stuff that we do. And so we chose to do an extra show in the fall in lieu of that. You know, so that's kind of, quote, our outdoor WGI.
Yeah,
Right.
no, I think that's great. I think one thing that's come up in our podcast so far with all our guests is that, you know, this is just a big puzzle piece. What our jobs are is just a big puzzle piece, and you're just trying to plug in the right pieces to fit your kids, fit your community, your stakeholders, yourself, you know, your own approach. And so I think, you know, that's a really unique thing to do that you guys, and it's funny, I'll bring this up because we had Bill Bachman out to judge our North Texas Drumline contest. We've had him out, I think, a couple years now. And I asked him that. I was like, so why is it that, you know, anytime I ever see the Marcus Drumline, it doesn't matter if it's the category, it says right there, stand still. The instructions say to stand still. Yeah, you guys are out there drumming and moving. And he said, well, Kennan just thinks it's marching percussion, so we're going to march. You know, so talk about your approach to that.
Yeah, I mean, marching drumline is marching. If I'm gonna go to a marching contest, I'm gonna march.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's the way it started.
Sure.
And that's the way I'll probably end up finishing it. But I mean, I do realize that not many people do that anymore. And you know, for reasons, everybody has their particular reasons. I you know, when we started doing it in North Texas, it was all about the marching. You know, and that's why we marched to choreograph the music to make it fit. And even in WGI they march. You know, nobody's standing still in WGI.
Definitely.
As far as the marching group. So it's just something that we do. I mean, I you know, maybe one of these days, you know, heck, I could end up just standing still and playing. But I think that I don't know any other, but I don't know any other way. So I'm kind of like the village idiot. Just gonna do it. Just do it. You know what I'm saying?
I would not categorize you that way.
I'm just doing what I've always been taught to do. You know, so
cool.
I just kind of that's just kind of our DNA, and the kids. That's kind of the way they've grown into it, and that's what they understand we do. So,
well, that's part of you. We talked about identity too, and you know that's part of your identity, and that's what they understand, and they don't, like you said, they don't know any other way. So I think there's nothing wrong with that. You know, it's just the way that you guys are, and
it's just it adds another element of danger and risk. But you know, we understand that. The kids know that when they go to a competition these days, that everybody's going to stand still. And I said, you know, you're already starting with 1 foot behind your back. You know, I'm like, you're at a disadvantage because you're going to be moving.
Yeah.
And they're like, we're going to move. I said, okay.
Yeah. All right. You guys want to keep doing it? We'll keep doing it.
That's awesome.
Let's, you know, you talked about the approach and how that hasn't changed. So I think that's going to be a great lead into, we're going to talk a little bit about your philosophy when it comes to teaching beginners and teaching middle schoolers and, you know, everything that goes into that. But since we got ourselves from, you know, 92 PASIC to whatever that last video is, let's see what you guys did just a couple of years ago, and we can kind of talk about that. I love this video. I've probably watched this video on my couch, admittedly like 50 times. I'm not kidding, because I got to see this live with my kids in the audience. You know, we did 5A advanced at HEB Drumline a couple years ago, and so, you know, we go a little earlier in the day and we come up in the stands and get to watch all the amazing 6A groups do their thing. And I remember seeing this live and just being absolutely blown away, just like any other time I get to see your group. So this is Marcus Drumline show from 2021 HEB Drumline contest, Terminal Velocity.
Terminal Velocity. Yeah. That means there's going to be some speed.
Yes. And some Tom Petty.
Yeah, there is a little Tom Petty in here. We kind of did everything.
Please welcome the Marcus HS
No props.
Drumline.
We're going proper.
But the drill creates the emotion.
Yeah. You know, just a side note as we were watching it, you know, back in those early shows, the props were, I think, a bigger deal because we were going to PASIC and all that. Now, with a local competition, nobody's really marching, so there's not a necessity for us to try to max things out because nobody else is going to do it. It's just not going to do anything. If we were going to WGI, then you have to spend a lot of money on doing that. But we usually, I'd say the last probably 7, 8, 9 years, it's just uniforms. You know, we march. Sometimes we may take a tarp out, but we kind of got rid of the tarp a few years ago. Now we just kind of march. Yeah, not a big deal.
This is a great arrangement of free fall in here. That plays so well into the theme. You know, no words. You know, we have so much narration in the activity, and no knock against groups that do a lot of that, but you can just know what the show is about just by the way that you guys move right here and, you know, what you're playing. I think that's super cool.
So that goes into Gravity, which is written by Cliff Walker.
Yeah.
That was actually written for us for 2020 at the Team EA.
Oh,
thing.
your first
so
invited percussion ensemble.
Yeah, so we ended
TBA.
up taking that, and this first piece is Cliff Walker's Gravity.
Kind of clear the palette here. Love this. Cool build up. A lot of metal sounds. I love this snare thing. Especially when they come up and do the thing next to the vibes.
Yeah, with
super unique.
All the marimbas
And
playing,
was
yeah.
part of this, did you want to get the snare sound through the mics a little bit? Because I think that you kind of had that effect a little bit.
Yeah, it's more visual than it was on it, but it did sound that. Yeah, I agree. It enhanced the sound.
It added another layer of the rhythm.
For sure.
I'm assuming the snare part was written before the marimba part, or vice versa. Do you know?
No, from the original, the marimba. That was the marimba part in the original.
Oh, cool. And then
so I just made the snare part. I wrote the snare part to match that.
That's super cool. Nice metric modulation here. Cool little pod. The battery's in here. You have any freshmen on this line?
Yeah, 4 basses.
I remember hearing that about your band. I was like, and someone was in the crowd, and someone was like, "That's like all bass, all freshmen." I was like, "Oh my gosh."
That's crazy. I love this marimba virtuosity here, the 2 mallets. And then later the marimbas show their virtuosity with their 4 mallets too. Inner mallet stuff.
Okay, this is Bill Bachman break.
BBB. Woo! Love the break drum contributions. Zilbel.
Ooh, that's a roll right there.
And I love that moment right there. I just want to make a point. You are ready to just give it up for them, and I'm sure they saw that and energizes them. More metric modulations. Yep, there you go. Now here we are at whatever tempo this is. Cool little trade-off there. More cool sound effects here. Yep. That was a lot in that first section.
There's a lot of variety. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember. Okay, I know what's happening. I had to think about. I don't think we had a middle tune. We just had 2 large tunes.
Yeah.
This is Paul Rennick's range here of Perpetual Motion. I like this a lot because like you hear that, those snare rolls, just the touch.
Yeah.
Very fast.
This goes to their touch, I think.
Yeah.
It makes them, it flatters them, I think. this
Yeah.
piece.
Yeah.
And buzzes. So much confidence there. Fast direction changes.
Yeah, it's pretty fast.
There's your inner mallet virtuosity here. Got simultaneous responsibilities here.
So yeah, check out the timpani, all the pedaling right here. You can, yeah, he's all over it.
Yeah.
I think the next year, last year, he did a big old, I don't know if you remember last year's show, but
Yeah.
he had a little timpani on it.
Yeah. really cool to hear the development of our sound systems and how they contribute. This is a great example of that. Not in the way, but just what a cool palette.
Enhancing, yeah.
Yes, love this part. And they're setting up the solos here. Oh my gosh. I love the motif. Doom chuckle chuckle.
Love that riser.
Yes. Sound mixer guy is giving up too. Everyone's pumped.
Yeah.
Woo! Money.
So good. So good.
Pretty good. That's pretty good.
Yeah. It's pretty good. It's pretty clean. Pretty clean and you know, just inspiring. I mean, what an inspiring piece of music, just like everything you guys do. But I want to go, like, I want to get the kids up and just go work on the show, like, right now.
Yeah.
It just gets me pumped up for that, so.
You know,
Wow.
when I see old shows, I think what bothers me is like, is this year's show gonna be at least as good as that year?
You set the bar pretty high every year. You know?
So I don't like going back and looking at old stuff sometimes for that reason.
Yeah.
Right.
It's because when I see it, I'm like, oh no, I think what I got this year is not gonna be as good as you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like you're
definitely.
trying to always kind of one up what you did the time before.
Sure.
And you know, another part of this dream job is the whole creativity part.
Yeah.
You know, being able to stay creative, being able to stay relevant,
Yeah.
being able to stay up. Because after you've done it for a long time, you keep wondering, like, am I still relevant? Like, am
Sure.
I going to be able to do this, you know, for a long time?
Yeah.
And so, you know, I had that. I thought about that even, you know, when I was after my first 10 years, like, is the next show going to be better than, you know, am I going to be able to do something better than I did the year before?
Sure. Yeah.
I got to imagine people like Paul and Scott Johnson, they got to think the same thing. You know, like, we
Definitely.
got to do this again. Like,
Yeah.
how am I going to outdo this one? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
there's always like, you can't go backwards.
No.
You know, you got to go up.
Yeah. Well, one of the questions I had for you, we can come back to some of the stuff in that video, but, you know, you surround yourself with great educators.
Yes.
So, like, who are some of the people along the years that have just kind of been around your program that have helped you take it from where it was to the next level?
Percussion wise?
Sure.
Well, I don't have, I definitely, currently I have Bill Bachman, who comes out, you know, a fair amount. He doesn't, you know, during the school year, he's out usually one day for a little bit and kind of helps us out. He also does some lessons with like some of the battery kids, which really helps our program with their hands.
Yeah.
Which I really
Definitely.
like, you know.
We like watching his videos of y'all playing eights at like 250.
Yeah,
Also,
he
likes to post those.
he likes to post that. I don't post anything, but he likes to post that. But Brandon Kelly has been our private instructor for like the last, I think, 11 or 12 years.
Yeah.
Brandon, I'm not sure if I remember correctly, but I think it's around that time.
Cool.
The longest instructor I've had as far as private lessons. He kind of does them all.
Yeah.
But we've had, you would know who Andrea Vinay is.
Mm-hmm.
She was one of my pit techs for 3 years.
Oh my gosh. That's
Yeah,
incredible.
she was a pit tech here for 3 years. Josh Jennings, who's a really well-known percussionist in the area,
yeah.
he was actually one of my former students, and he was a pit tech here for a while. Man, I'm probably going to miss out some. There's a guy with Ryan Kilgore with the Blue Coats.
Yep.
He was a tech here for a year or so.
Wow.
So we've had a lot of people run through the program that have been, you know.
Fresh faces that can offer new perspectives, and not that your perspective isn't also changing.
Oh
but
yeah, you got to have fresh people. You know, I try to get techs, you know, all the time. Techs are hard. that's a hard position to fill because they're usually 1 year and they're very temporary.
Yeah.
And so you're trying to find somebody that's a good fit for the kids and you.
Yeah.
But that's not going to be that long, so it's a constant you're kind of having to do that all the time. And I'm sure you guys have the same thing. It's just like you try your best, but I've had some great techs. I've had a Josh Herner has been a tech for us. I mean, some really, really great people, we've had along the way that have gone out and been, great, gone into drum corps world and just kind of killed it.
Yeah.
I've been really fortunate to have other people associated with the program, not maybe in the marching percussion, but I hate to, I don't want to throw any names out there, but, Shi Wu has been a long time, not just supporter, but
collaborator.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys have had her on a lot of concerts.
She's had a lot to do with a lot of things we've done before.
Yeah.
She's been involved with the program, maybe not so much in the last 2 or 3 or 4 years,
Sure.
but prior to that, she's had her stamp all over the program.
Definitely.
That's awesome.
Recently, I've I'd say in the last couple of years, John Parks is starting to have a lot to do with us as well.
Cool.
We've become really, really tight. Paul's writing, he doesn't really work with the kids that much, but his writing is very influential in our sound and our style. And so I have to include him as well. But and then band directors too. We've had great band directors that have been very influential with the kids. It's been one of those things where we've been really lucky to have. We have guest artists every year with our percussion ensemble concert that we've had. And the names are too long.
Well, if you watch the rest of that video that you sent me, the Wiley 25, you got whoever made that video list, at least up until that point, all the people. And it's just incredible.
Yeah, it just goes on. It just goes on and on. I mean, they could add another 10 names to that list now.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's staggering. It really is. And not that those people have a big impact of what we do for a long period of time, but for a brief period of time, they do.
Yeah.
Just really fortunate. I don't want to leave anybody out, but there's just a lot of people that have been, I have some helpers that have been with me, helped to write the drill and stuff, some guys that have been within the program. Dominic Pallone, who's not a percussionist, but probably my right-hand man for the last 20 years as far as just being there and being supportive. He writes drill. He's not even a percussionist.
Isn't he a teacher at?
Yeah, he's a teacher at
your
Marcus.
school?
Yeah. Everybody knows
Someone
him.
told me that.
Yeah, everybody. He used to run Lone Star for a little bit.
Oh wow.
And but he's just he just likes the activity. He's one of those guys who just likes to be around the drum stuff.
That's super
but
cool.
He's not a percussionist.
Yes.
That's awesome.
But he's a great friend of mine and a great contributor. Mark Biggs, who was my longtime, a really good friend of mine. We went to school together. He's the one who took me to Marcus in 1990.
Yeah.
He's the guy who said, "Hey, you want to come over and teach lessons?" Because he was an assistant band director at Marcus for about 3 or 4 years after that. And so Mark has been involved with me every summer, coming to do summer camps and stuff. So he's real involved. So, like any program, we do have a nest of people that are very, very, involved with the program. Maybe not as big as some people think. I think some people think we have just a whole lineage of people. At times we've had people work with us, but it's just, we have techs and we have people that do assist, but all the middle school teaching is done by me. Nobody really does that. Brandon does a little bit with some of the overflow with some of the band stuff, but all the beginner classes are done by me and
Well, we're going to get into the middle school stuff in a second, but wrapping up the high school stuff, and we can come back to it. I think it's refreshing for people to hear just how much support you've had over the years and how important it is to get other people out to work with your kids.
You can't. It's not a one-man show at all.
Yeah.
And it maybe in the beginning it was a little bit.
Sure.
And maybe it feels like it some days when you're the only one there.
Yep.
But there are people that help. It's just, at the end of the day, I am responsible for the bad and the bad. Not the good, but the bad. And, I have to make sure that if somebody's going to come in and work with the kids, that they're at a point where somebody can come in and work with them.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to have somebody come in and work with my students and they don't even know what's going on.
Right.
That's a waste of our resources and their time.
Absolutely.
So I always want to make sure that I put them in a spot to be to make that a good experience for all involved.
Cool.
But I guess if you've been teaching for a long time, there's a lot of techs that have come through the doors, man, at Marcus. That's a lot.
That's incredible. Well, the last thing I want to ask about, and I know Shannon wants to bring up a story that he observed from your program. That's pretty funny. But kind of in conjunction with that, can you talk a little bit about what is a rehearsal, a typical drumline or any rehearsal that you have with your kids look like? What's the general vibe? I mean, how do you approach? Just kind of describe for the listeners.
Okay, well, I guess a school day. We'll take a school day.
Sure.
Not really summer band because that's a little different.
Yeah.
But, a typical day, we are on the field on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Mondays we stay inside because we don't have the field on Mondays. Wednesdays we might track a lot around the parking lot. And then Friday is kind of a wild card day because it's going to happen on Fridays during football season.
Right. Are you guys double blocked?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So we have an hour and a half class.
Nice.
And so say, for instance, on Tuesdays, well, what happens now is I'll come in. I try to get there before the bell rings. I mean, sometimes I'm running to get there from the middle school. But I try to get there enough time where I can quickly change because it's hot as heck outside. Yeah. So I'll change and then I'll go unlock the door because now the door security is out of control.
Gosh, yeah.
So I have to unlock the door, take out the bar, and then I'll try to roll a few things out. And then when they come in, I have to stand there and watch them roll it. I can't leave the door. Yep. And I watch them roll it, and they know what to do. They kind of get started. So it takes about maybe 10 minutes, and we kind of get everything out. And then I quickly shut the door. I have to lock it because it has to be locked.
Yeah.
And so I get the badges. I have a couple extra badges in case a kid has to go in. I give them a badge if they go in to use the restroom or whatever for a lesson or something. And then we go out, we warm up. But I think I'm pretty consistent.
Yeah.
Nothing really moves my needle. I'd say the only thing that moves my needle are kids that are doing things that they can control and they know better not to do.
Sure. Yeah.
Example of that might be not showing up and having your music.
Right. Yeah.
That's not cool.
Yeah.
Or showing up and not having their items.
Right.
That's really the only thing that really will take me into a different direction, so to speak. But other than that, I'm really consistent.
Moving your needle, I like that.
Yeah, moving my needle a little bit. But other than that, I feel, I don't know what my students would say, but I'm pretty consistent. I'm not too high, too low.
Yeah.
I'm probably a little bit more of a cornball. I'll say stuff that I try to be cool, and then they know I'm not. So, I'll say something stupid, and they just laugh. They look at me and just do one of these.
Yeah.
Matter of fact,
Pause real quick because I think we're about to do this, and we'll reset and we'll keep going with the story. Okay. This is great. All right, so you're talking about in rehearsal.
So we're in rehearsal, and I try to stay. I try to stay somewhat young. I mean, I don't want to be the old dude. You know what I'm saying? I want to try to blend in.
Yeah.
And I got 3
Keep up
kids.
with the trends.
Yeah, I got 3 of my own kids, and they're 24, 22, and 18. And my youngest just graduated high school, but I'm always trying to be with the crowd. Trying to be hip.
Sure.
So sometimes we'll look at I'll get one of those urban dictionaries. Try to learn some words. And then
you gotta be careful with that because you might stumble onto one that you don't know.
I know. You got to be careful. But I try to use them wisely.
Yeah.
And I came on one that was called Kronk.
Crunk?
Yeah, that's it. Kronk.
Yeah,
Kronk.
Yeah.
And so they were playing an exercise one day, and they stopped, and I said, "Man, that sounds Kronk." And everybody died laughing.
That's so funny.
That's awesome.
And so I'll try to throw one of those curveballs out every now and then.
Yeah, just keep it light.
Just to try to keep it light. I'll say
that's what we're doing here on the podcast.
Yeah, they'll play something. I'll say, "Man, that's a little salty, man. Let's." And they'll just
you got to throw this one out. They love this. That was a little sus.
A little sus.
That means suspicious.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you say that to your students, they'll know what that means.
A little sus.
It was like you weren't sure if it was clean or not.
I'm going to use that one this weekend.
Yeah.
Sus. Okay, good.
A little sus, guys.
Yeah. Okay.
There you go. That's
so
for free.
I'm always trying to learn, a little bit of a little bit. My daughter's kind of funny. She always tries to. She just looks at me and says, "You're using that wrong." And I said, "No, I'm not." She goes, "Yeah, you are."
Yeah.
So I try to go through them first, and then I try it out on my own students.
Nice.
And
guinea pigs.
so, anyways, there's probably stuff I shouldn't say on the air, but
No, this
it's
is
kind of funny.
all perfect. So Shannon likes to tell. Well, we like to bring up the story. A funny observation. He saw you guys in the lot one day. You want to tell us
What's
the
that?
story?
So this was an HEB drumline contest, and
Okay.
you're busy like judging half the day, right?
Uh-huh.
And your group gets to go later. So I'm in the lot, and your battery set up for an ensemble's ready to go, and they're like running some show chunks. And I think you had like just came from judging the last group, whatever. Like you're arriving to the warm up late, and you come around the corner, and the group's playing, and I see a look of confusion like, on your face first, and it quickly turns to maybe something that had moved your needle, right? And because they didn't have the metronome going, they're running show chunks with no met.
Yeah.
And you put
That will move my needle.
you put a screeching halt to
Whatever's
everything.
going. All activities will cease.
He said it. He said, "Stop."
Whistle blow.
Where's the metronome? And one of the texts was like, "Well, I think it might be back on the truck." And he said, "Put your drums down. We're not playing another note till the metronome's out here." Shut the thing down.
Yeah, we shut it down. Yeah, we got to remember that's early in the season,
Yeah.
so we got to have the metronome still. We're not ready to cut the cord at all. And that's one of those things. Yeah, not having all the equipment out there would be one of the things that would set my needle off. But I mean, it's really not. That's not a lot to ask. Just go get the metronome. Let's get it done, man.
I think what was so great for me was the fact they were kind of doing their thing, and then you walked around the corner and they're like, "I'm not here. Something's not right here." I think everyone is like, "Uh-oh."
Something's not right.
Exactly.
We don't have a metronome.
And then he cut the whole thing, and everyone was just like, "Yeah, you're right."
Yeah. Well, not to paint a picture of you as someone who's super intense, because obviously you like to goof off with the kids, and I think anyone who does this job, you have to know, the times when it's time to work and it's time to be intense and have that sense about you. But you have to have that. Look, we're just drumming, we're having fun, we're hanging out, and finding that balance is so hard.
If you're too intense, kids aren't gonna like it. They're not going to want to do it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You're going to scare them off.
Yeah.
So you have to have a balance of both, and you have to have you gotta definitely. For people that are just getting into teaching, you have to have that level of respect.
Sure.
That you have to earn it, but you also have to be consistent. Because if you're not consistent, they're not going to respect you consistently.
Yeah.
And so it's real important that I was talking to John Bingaman.
Sure.
Earlier. Last week we were talking, and he mentioned really that he was in his band hall one day, and the kids were talking, kind of joking around with one of the other directors, and he said, Kenny goes, I don't really do that kind of stuff with my kids around in my office, and I said, I know exactly what you mean. I said, my relationship is a little different with my kids. They just run in my office and start going
Goofing
bananas.
off, yeah.
They knock on the door. And they come. I said, "Come on in." Whatever. It's a very professional relationship.
Yeah.
It's not like a wild.
Right.
I'm your best friend kind of a relationship.
And that's hard especially first, second
Younger,
year teacher,
yes.
because you're so close to their age, and you know so many of the jokes and the trends and all that stuff, and so it's just important. And hindsight's 20/20.
Yeah.
If I look back on how I was a director my first couple of years, I'm just like, wow, if I knew how I could impact the program differently by acting, just doing a few things differently, it's just, but it's hard to know that, when you're in it.
Yeah, and when
That's why we have this podcast.
Yeah, and when the more you do it, the wiser you get. You get wiser with age, and I think I'm a better teacher, and I'm a smarter teacher now than I was 20 years ago.
Sure.
The way I do things is a lot better. It makes more sense. I don't have to take as much time to do certain things as I did maybe 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And I think
Shout out technology.
Yeah, and I think I'm just better. I'm probably better with my rehearsal consistency. Not that I mean, because like you said, when you were watching some of those videos, I was only about 3 or 4 years older than some of those kids.
Yeah.
I wasn't that much older than them.
Right.
So, I was learning kind of while they were learning. Unfortunately, they were learning at my expense.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Sure. Well, it's always going to be that. You can't avoid that.
Yeah, you can't
in this job.
You can't.
It's so
and
hard.
you know what? Another thing, I have people that student teach or text with me, and they go apply for jobs, and it's so hard to explain to somebody, and they say, well, I said, man, he's great, and they said, well, why didn't he have it? What's he lacking? I said, just somebody give him a chance.
Yeah.
I said, somebody's got to give him a chance,
Yeah.
so that he can get that experience.
Sure.
If somebody doesn't give somebody a chance, they're never going to get the experience they need to do what they want to do.
And you never know. I mean, I think there's so many people out there who maybe don't have the same experiences that you or I had, in high school growing up, that end up becoming just some of the best teachers, just because someone took a chance on them.
Yeah.
So I think that's really awesome. And is there anything else? Do you want to ask him anything else about high school before we move into middle school? Or
Sure. So we talked about how well-rounded your musical upbringing was, and it's hard to say because I've seen the Marcus program for so long. Like, do you get the sense that you're known for one thing more than another? About your high school program, do you feel like the drumline is like everyone thinks Marcus drumline, but they don't realize that you've been Midwest and won on the IPEC?
Great question. I think about that sometimes too. I was thinking that was a question you guys were actually going to ask me, something like that. Mm-hmm. And I would tend to think, and this probably makes sense to everybody. The drumline is the most exposed thing that we do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's what all the eyeballs are placed upon.
Yeah.
If you ask me what I'm most proud about, it would probably be the ensembles that I teach.
Yeah.
Because that's what people don't see, and that's where so much of the learning and the teaching go on. Not that the drumline stuff doesn't, but it's just it's a time where it's me and the kids. It's not, you don't have to worry about moving, with a drum on to a certain dot or something like that. We're just learning how to play, and we're getting better as percussionists, just, in that environment.
Listening.
Yeah.
Being great musicians.
Yeah. And I've done some clinics on this, and I think the way you develop a percussionist, the best, not the only way, but I think the best and purest way is through percussion ensemble. Now, you can do it through drumline. I'm not saying that, but I think the best way is through if you want to get that total percussionist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's where you're going to get it through. So to answer your question, I think people probably know me more for the drumline stuff because that's what gets all the attention. That's why when you think of band directors, you think of their performances at BOA or state or stuff like that. But there's so many other things that I'm just super proud about that have nothing to do with the marching percussion program.
Yeah, I totally feel that.
And you guys are experiencing that too. You know what I'm saying? Like, when you go to Midwest, and which is awesome. That's congratulations.
Thank you so much.
I didn't tell you guys that.
No, it's all good.
It's experiences like those that really drive your program, and maybe that you're a little bit more. You almost have a special place for all those performances in your career because of what it took to get it, and then and all that. And I'd say that maybe I'm more well known for. I'd like to think I'm pretty well known for what I do with middle school kids. I mean, we're going to get to that in just a second.
Great segue.
But I mean, I spend. When I tell people this, their eyes get really big. But I never get to the high school till 2:00 every day. I mean, I spend all my morning and most of my early, lunchtime, afternoon at the middle school. I don't get to the high school till about 1:45. That's it.
Wow.
And so when people hear that, they're like, "Wow, I thought you were at the high school all the time." No, that's not really it at all.
Well, you alluded to that a little bit. So tell us about how your schedule is structured, because you have 3 feeders.
3
right?
feeders.
And do you get to teach at least the beginner class for all 3 of those?
Teach all the beginner classes, and then I spend at least, most all middle schools usually have 2 bands.
Yeah.
So I'll spend at least 2 days with each of the top bands, two rehearsals a week with each of the top bands, and then I try to slip in one with the that's where Brandon comes in.
Yeah.
If I can't get to all the concert bands, he'll come in and pick up some of the slack on that.
Cool.
But I'd like to spend at least two section rehearsals a week with all those guys.
And what are they playing in terms of percussion ensemble stuff in the spring? Do they all prepare a percussion ensemble sometimes? Maybe all of them?
Yes, they all do. Regularly, they'll start their first one they do one in beginner class at the end of the year. And then when they go into 7th, 8th grade, they'll do one for Christmas. Mm-hmm. They'll do one for solo and ensemble, and then they'll do a end of the year ensemble. So they'll do
3 separate ones.
Wow. Each year. So by the time they come 7, this past year, ironically enough, I took all 3 middle schools and we went to that TCU festival, and they all played 3 ensembles. So you talk about
right.
Mr. Wiley was like, wow,
that's a lot on your plate.
That was too much on my plate.
Yeah,
so
right.
there was a lot going on with that because I had more than I usually do, but typically that's kind of what we do.
Cool. We'll back it up a little bit. So, another thing that you're super well known for is your book. One of many books, by the way, but probably your most famous is Simple Steps to Beginning Percussion. So talk about your motivation for writing that, how it's evolved over the years, and just your general approach to teaching beginners.
Well, when I was, a lot of people don't know this, but Mark Wessels and I went to high school together.
Nice.
Yes.
Oh, we're starting out hot top. We're going right in the Wessels Wiley.
We're going right to
debate.
it. Well,
not wasting any time.
No, not going into a debate, but it's important because I used Mark's book because Mark's book was the only thing that was available at the time that I was teaching. There really wasn't anything else unless you wanted to go to something that was a band method. Yeah. And I didn't really want to do that. And so Mark and I had gone to high school, and he told me about this book when he was going to school at UTA. Hey, I got this book, blah, blah, blah. And so I knew it was out there, and it'd been out there when I started teaching my classroom stuff. I started teaching classroom stuff, I guess, around 92 or 93. Yeah. And so at that point, his book had been out for, I'm not sure, Mark, I think it had been out for 5 or 6 years.
Had the Far Side guy on it.
Yeah,
the yellow,
caveman.
The yellow.
Yeah.
I've been in a few old band halls and come across one of those first copies.
And so I used that book for probably 5 years. And then one day I was sitting down, and I wasn't complaining, but I was just like, I like Mark's book, but I was just finding that I was having to move around a little bit, and I wasn't teaching. I decided that I wanted to teach my kids things that I missed out when I was younger, and that I had to go around. I mean, this would be a whole another podcast.
Definitely.
But I didn't really learn how to rebound the stick very well when I was in high school or college. And I kind of retaught myself how to play when I was working on my master's degree with Ed Soph and the great Ed Soph. And we got music coming. We good?
Yeah, we're
good. So Ed spent a lot of time with me trying to figure out why I couldn't rebound, and Dr. Shatroma. And eventually, after probably 9 months to a year, I learned to let the stick rebound. I know that's hard for everybody to believe, but I couldn't do it because I played on plastic heads when I marched corps. Right. And back in the day when Marty taught us, there wasn't a lot of talk about rebound. You played into the drum. Yeah. Rom. And these heads these days, these Kevlar heads, you can get a little easier rebound. Yeah. I do have some theories about that though, because I think that the kids are getting rebound off the Kevlar, but I'm not so sure they're getting a true rebound all the time. We can come back to that topic. But so anyways, I decided that, I don't want my kids to have to go what I went through. I need these kids to sound like I want them to sound. Yeah. I want them to have a nice open sound. Remember we talked about watching these videos and how I could tell you how some of their sounds, because I was teaching these kids a lot about the rebound stroke, and Mark's book didn't really do enough about that for what I needed. So when I went through it, I realized, maybe I should just kind of write my own book. Somebody suggested I do that. So I did it, and I came out with my book in 2000. It was the snare drum book. And I knew that when I wrote it, I was going to do a mallet book. So I left that option open, and I knew that when I wrote the mallet book that there would be the possibility that it would be combined with this one. And so one thing led to another. But the reason of writing the book was the impetus of writing the book was I wanted my kids to be able to learn rhythms and I wanted to be able to spend a lot of time on rebound without any interruptions.
Yeah.
And so when I wrote that book, I was able to spend 14 chapters on nothing but rebound.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted.
Cool.
And so the rest is kind of, we can go into more, but that was the reason I wrote the book.
Yeah. Well, I think, we talk about the different books, and we just had John on the podcast, so his book is very different than your book, and your book is very different than Mark's book.
Everybody does
and
it differently.
Again, it's not to say one is better than the other, but, different, and like we're going to use all three books this year, in different ways. And so I just think that that's cool that there's so much variety.
Yeah.
Between
I mean,
the three
when
books.
like I said, when I taught, there wasn't. It was like, there was only really one book, and Mark got a lot of traction because there just was nothing out there.
Yeah.
And to this day, a lot of people still using Mark's book. I mean, because it has been around such a long time. It's kind of a staple in percussion pedagogy.
Absolutely. And it's evolving too. I mean, with what he's doing with Michael Eagle and all that stuff is super cool.
Yeah.
So I had a question about, what we asked John the same question when you kind of about beginners. Well, maybe I want to ask you a twofold question. What is an ideal beginner leaving 6th grade percussion, entering 7th grade percussion? What kind of skill sets do they have? Describe that.
My students, I want them to be able to, on snare drum, I want them to be able to demonstrate pretty much the 14 exercises that I have in the back of the book, which include exercises for single strokes, for alternating strokes, just single, all rebound.
Yeah.
I want them to be able to develop a bounce. We call it I don't, in the book I don't use this term, but with my students I do. We call it grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. Grade 3 being a really, really fat bounce.
Yeah.
But I want them to be able to at least get out of my class with a grade 2. If they can do a grade 3, that's awesome, but we don't want a grade 1. We want to get past that and get to a grade 2, level 2. And so I give them, there's a number of bounce exercises for that. I want them to be able to play a buzz roll pretty well and to know how to play a buzz roll. They need to know their flam rudiments, basic flam rudiments, and accents, single hand accents and alternating accents, and then some flam rudiments.
Yeah.
I want them to know the flam rudiments, and then a little bit of some 8th note, 16th note triplets.
Cool.
Kind of take us through all that. So and then I want them to be able to read all of their basic syncopated rhythms, everything from quarter notes to dotted 8th notes, everything that you could imagine. That's kind of a necessity for them on snare drum.
Yeah.
On mallets, I want them to be able to produce all of this, obviously on the snare drum, produce a great a tone on the drum.
Yeah.
Be able to, on the keyboards, be able to produce a great tone on the keyboard. Obviously know what's involved with all the technique on that, and then their scales. I want them to be able to perform. I don't require them to know all 12 major scales.
Sure.
I want them to know all the way through D flat, and then the first 3. I think we do the first 3 sharp scales. And that's
Okay,
it.
you're talking about circle of fourths?
Yeah.
Nice.
So we do that. Then I want them to be able to read at a proficient level. Now, that has a different interpretation, what everybody means by proficient level.
Yeah.
But I guess if I'm using my book, it would be to the stuff that's in checkpoint B. That's a proficient level for me.
Cool.
You know what I'm saying?
And
So
there's
if they're-
different patterns and stepwise and skipwise motion?
yeah,
And
that's all included, yeah.
cool.
Yeah,
What
so-
about accessory playing and ensemble playing at the beginner level?
Well, I want them to be able to. I don't know if I can give you a certain. I want them to know what the instruments are, recognize them all. They're not all going to get a chance to play timpani.
Right.
That's just the bottom line.
Sure.
But they need to know information about timpani.
Yeah.
They need to know where to strike the timpani. How to roll on the timpani.
Because they're going to be left to their own devices at some
Yes.
point.
So they may not all get to play, but we may get them, in class to play a little bit. But as far as playing on a piece of music or
Right.
playing in an ensemble, they're not all going to get to play timpani.
Yeah.
But they need to know, like they all have timpani mallets, so they need to know where to play on the drum.
Yeah.
I would expect them, not to tune the drums. That's probably not something they're going to learn the first year with me.
Sure.
we're going to probably just rely on the gauges and some people go, man, that's awful, I wouldn't do that, but that's just not one of my top priorities.
We've come into I tell my students straight up, we do like a timpani week towards the end of the year. The kids love to just get all into timpani, and I straight up tell them, I'm like, look, this is where we're at in the profession, in our career field, where we have these apps, and so I want you to understand, how to use your ears and how to look at how to make it sound the right way. But here's the bottom line, even through high school, I'm going to go up there and check them with my phone. Yes. So what's more important to me is that they know the technology that's accessible to them, and that they can do the the same thing that I would do. Because I'm not gonna use a pitch pipe in 2023. No offense. Yeah. Anyone who still does
trying to figure out. All right, this is what a fourth sounds. I haven't done that in a long time now. It's like I'm not gonna do it. Just pull your phone out, get the thing tuned before the band director starts yelling.
Right, exactly.
I mean, it's also important that they know the range. I mean, I want them to kind of be familiar on what notes go on which drums, and that's 100%. In my book, and so they can always. That's why I say hold on to the book. Yeah. And if you get to a point where you're playing timpani and you're not sure what note to put on what drum, look at that chapter where it talks about ranges, and you'll know which drum it goes on. Yeah. So they have that information with them as well. But as far as bass drum and crash cymbal and suspended cymbal, all the same things. We go through the technique on all these instruments with the students, but at the end of the day, they're not all playing that instrument. Right. So we try our best to give as many kids the opportunity to experience as many instruments as we can, and that's the best we can do. But they get exposure listening to me talk to somebody about it. It's not like they're just sitting there, on their phone while I'm talking to somebody else. No, they're all engaged. Yeah. We just may have to, not everybody may be able to get to play that particular instrument. Sure. When it comes to keyboards, now that's a different thing. They all play vibes, they all play xylophone, they all play marimba, and they all play glockenspiel.
Are these middle schools you teach at, are they 6th through 8th campuses?
Yes.
So you have access to all the mallet instruments that the 7th and 8th graders have too.
Yeah, so I would say pretty much from January on, we're playing on the large instruments. Nice. We use our little bell kits for the first part because we're just not playing much. They're just finding where the notes are and playing tetrachords and some basic stuff. So once we're ready to go, then we bring out the big instruments, and once they know where all the notes are located and they've got a feel for kind of what's going on, then we start developing the marimba and the xylophone. Cool. So they all play a different. Let's say come in the next day, play a different instrument, don't play the same one. So we make sure all the kids move around on the mallet instruments for sure.
And at some point, sorry to interrupt. At some point, you decide we're going to do a percussion ensemble. Do they do one per year or multiple?
The beginners will just do one. Cool. I'll do one, and we'll do that towards the end of the year, usually in April. Nice. Because at that point they don't know enough. I've done once or twice. I've done a Christmas one, but that seems to kind of take me off my game plan.
You're still developing the hands.
I kind of have to stop everything to show you how to play sleigh bells. I'm like, I really don't want to do that. And they're going to get some of that if the band is going to play. Say for instance, a beginner band is going to play a couple of Christmas tunes. Well, then you're going to have to stop what you're doing. You're going to have to talk about bass drum, crash cymbals, or whatever's in that particular piece. I have 3 schools, and believe it or not, they all do it different. One does only mallets only, which I love. So the kids are just playing with the band, but they're just playing bells. Love it. Another one will do a full-blown, rock'em sock'em, we're using everything. And then the other one will do one, and it will use mostly bells, but they'll have 1 bass drum and 1 snare drum.
Nice. So every level there.
Yeah, so there's like 3 different variations in all 3. And I'm like, whatever. I mean, that's the band director's thing, so I'm cool. I'll support whatever they want to do. But I will tell you, the more stuff we use, it kind of takes me out of my rhythm, so to speak, as we're kind of, getting into stuff before the holidays, and we have to stop and do that. But, whatever it takes, we've got to make it work.
I want to share. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I have a related question born out of personal frustration. Do you ever
totally? A lot of these questions came out of frustration.
Yes, personal frustration.
Spiteful.
Right. So you go through, this is how you take tambourine, or this is triangle, whatever, and then you don't talk about it for a while, and then you see an ensemble, you walk into band class, and some kid's doing something that you totally did not teach them, and you're like, I know I told you how to do that, and you're not doing it. Does that ever happen?
All the time.
Okay, it happens to Kennan Wylie. Okay.
All the time.
I feel better about my whole life now.
Because they, that's not enough. Once is not enough. Oh, no. You're going to have to, they have to experience it for them to remember it. And if you just sit there and this is a little tip for educators out there. This is my motto. Talk less and play more.
Love it.
You know, because if you're going to sit there and you're going to give a big sermon about how to play the tambourine and go, you got it? And everybody's like, yeah. Well, guess what's going to happen when they go into band class? They don't have it. You know, they don't know because they haven't played it. You know, they haven't experienced what it feels like to play the instrument. So it happens all the time. And they get better as they have more experience doing what we want them to do. And unfortunately, with all these instruments that we're talking about, that first year, there's just not enough time to have experiences for all the kids to have multiple experiences on multiple instruments.
Yeah, they might play it in class one day, but really doing it in a concert is a whole nother story.
You have to pick your battles wisely in the beginner. You have to figure out what you want your kids to be able to do. As I said, those snare drum things are pretty much non-negotiable because those are things that I expect them to be able to do because they have a pad at home and they can get those things mastered. The keyboard as well. They can get these things mastered. When it comes to some of the accessory stuff, they don't have those at home. They're going to have to come up before or after school to master these instruments if they do that at all. And so they're probably going to get better at those through experiencing them in our rehearsals, and the band rehearsals. And so that's why I think that second year, that's where those percussion instruments start to become better learned because they're having more experience in band playing those.
Definitely.
And
so you're not there all the time also, so they're you don't have to be there working with them 100% of the time for them to get better at playing tambourine.
I think when percussion teachers expect their kids to enter the band the next year and know all the instruments, they're kind of fooling themselves, man. It's not going to happen. You know, all you can do is get them rhythmically tight and ready to go. So when they see the rhythms, they know how they go. To play in time is a big deal. To play rhythms, to have a good sound. All these are things that are going to be valuable for them, and then they can pick up some of these other things when they enter the band world. It's just what we got to do as percussionist teachers. You know, if you think you're going to get it all done in that first year, I think you may be overshooting. You know what I'm
for
saying?
sure. Well, the other thing I was going to share with you is, kind of on the ensemble side, my beginners have played William Tell Overture that you arranged.
I like that.
Every single year.
I like that.
And I love it because the way that you arrange that, there's something for every kid at every point of the year. You might have your all-star, like that xylophone part and that bell part are pretty tricky with the 16th notes, and the marimbas parts and the vibe parts have their own challenges. And then there's a really, there's some challenging stuff in the snare drum stuff. And I think you have a few ensembles like this, but we love to play that every year as kind of their introductory, percussion ensemble. And now it's funny because we have like 6 years of kids who've all played that. They're like, hey, I played the chime part. What'd you play on William Tell? And they kind of all have that. But I just wanted to share that with you because I think
a side note, I think through the podcast, we really emphasized, percussion ensemble, how big a deal that is to me. And in the writing of this book, and I want to go back to the book, but I have to say one of the unique features of the entire book is that you can play things together from the get-go to the end in an ensemble fashion. For instance, there is a solo in there called Rock and Roll, and Hunter's Chorus goes with rock and roll.
Oh, cool.
A lot of people don't even know that, and they've had the book for 10 years. I'm like, dude, you play them together. So when we learn it, both the kids learn the solos, and we put half of them on mallets, and half. Now, what that's creating is they're learning how to play together. And that's the whole thing. That's like, if you want to teach ensemble, and you can even go in the earlier part of the book, you can go into like checkpoint A, which is after the first, I think, 5 chapters. There's like there's like there's an etude on the snare drum that goes 1 and 2 and 3, and the bell part is Little Liza Jane. Ding, dong, ding, and they go together. And so you're teaching kids at a very early age how to play together as a group. And so, that's another byproduct of this book that a lot of people just don't understand. Well, maybe they understand it, but they don't. Maybe they don't value it. But that's, if you're wondering why my groups sound the way they do, play the way they do, it's because they're going through these experiences. They're going through playing together at an early age. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's why we were able to, maybe at the high school level, be able to experience playing ensembles at a high level because of that. It has to have something to do with it. I think.
That's super cool.
Because if that's the first time they really experience it, or they only do like 2 at the middle school level, that's not really. I have people that I know in other parts of the country, and they say, "Oh, we're having our percussion ensemble concert," and man, so cool. And they listen what they're playing. They're playing like 3 novelty percussion. That's not really a percussion ensemble concept. concert.
Right.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
Like you're not really playing other percussion instruments. You're playing like brooms and you're playing like trash can lids.
Yeah.
That's not really.
It's great to have maybe one or two on your concert, but
We played those all the time in the 90s. That's how I
Yeah.
built up my program, and interest is by getting kids involved in those.
Yeah.
But that's not what I would value as the meat and potatoes of my percussion ensemble program. Those were just fun little tidbits,
Yeah.
like icing on the cake.
Yeah, for sure.
But you can't play those and go, well, we have a percussion ensemble. Well, yeah, kind of.
asterisk.
I'm not quite sure about that,
Yeah.
And I think like what I do with my students, like really starting from the beginner level up, is always trying to incorporate experiences where they can play together.
Yeah.
And when I say together, I'm not talking about 6 people on a pad. I mean, that's together, that's cool, but they're all playing the same part.
Right.
I'm talking about somebody playing one part and you're playing another part.
Yep. Yeah.
So now can we keep it together?
Yeah.
That's playing music together, you know?
And then that just translates to when they're listening. Oh, now you have to listen to the flutes way up there. Or we have to listen to the tubas. You're the timpani player. You got to play with the same tone as the tubas.
Exactly.
Just kind of opens their ears up.
There's value in playing all the same part. I get that. But there's a different kind of value when you have to have independent parts being played together. And I think that's where they really kind of almost start to grow up a little bit more, because they're responsible for their own part and their own performance, their own timekeeping, their own accuracy. And so it's kind of fun. And their eyes get big as coconuts and like, oh my gosh, like I gotta play these rhythms or it's not gonna fit together.
Cartoonish, almost like eyes
like
popping out of their
like
head.
because the pieces will fit together if they play it together. You know?
I like playing those duets out of the snare line. They're so young. We're
Yes.
playing everything together. Cool. Now I'm gonna play line 8. You play line 9.
Oh no.
Boom! It's just there's like I don't understand why this isn't working. I know. It's a process. It's a process.
It's a disaster, yeah. And you're like, why is this happening? Just like you were talking about the kid coming in not knowing how to play tambourine. Why is that happening? Well, because we probably haven't done it enough with them.
Exactly. Yeah.
So if they get more experiences, they're going to be able to be a little more independent on that stuff. So that's another thing about my book that I'm really, really happy with how that turned out as far as the ensemble ability to coordinate playing together with a method book as opposed to just, everything's just lines and technique and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 2 more questions in the middle school realm. I want you to answer the same question I asked you about what does a beginner going into 7th grade look like, but what does an 8th grader going into 9th grade look like for you, ideally?
I would say exactly what I said for the 6th grader coming in.
Yeah.
With a little bit more juice on it,
Yeah.
just a little bit more,
Sure.
because I'm really happy with that. That's all I need. Bill Bachman, and most people probably know who Bill Bachman is. He's more famous than probably all 3 of us put together.
Yeah.
So Bill and I, we seem to agree a lot on technique, and he says this all the time. He goes, man, if those kids, he goes, the reason I think we have success with some of the kids at the high school is because when they come up, they know how to rebound.
Yeah.
And that, I hate beating this over and over, but the reason that's such a big deal is because it makes everything they play sound good.
Yeah.
Like when they play the toms in the percussion ensemble, they sound great.
Yeah.
That's why I sent you that video, is because the best thing about that another video we're not going to play, we don't have enough time, but it's an ensemble, and just the way they sound when they play the instruments is like, holy smokes, man. And it's
It's a hard ensemble too.
It's a hard ensemble, but it's just I just love the way they sound when they play.
Yeah.
The biggest compliment that I've got in the past 5 years actually came about 2 months ago. I'm not going to tell who it was because I don't want to give that person out, but they came in and listened to our percussion ensembles, a couple of them play, and we went in my office and they said, I've traveled to a lot of high schools this fall, and I've traveled to a lot of universities this fall and in the spring, and he goes, your students don't play like anybody else.
Yeah.
And he smiled, and I smiled because I know exactly what that means.
That's awesome.
That means that the way they play and the way they're getting the sounds out of the instruments, that's what it's all about for me, at least. That's one of my big things. And for somebody to say that, that's like one of the most important things anybody's ever told me, because that's a big deal.
It's a foundational step that we don't always talk about because we're so focused on getting their chops up, getting them to read, getting them to play technique.
Yep.
Sometimes we just need to stop and think about, even with a practice pad, how are we making the practice pad sound?
Yeah, we're so technically driven because everything
in Texas.
Exactly. And you know what? We're probably part of the problem.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, I'm gonna sit here and say, I mean, I am part of that problem, but I hope that I'm also maybe not smart enough, but wise enough to realize that with that it comes the obviously the sound quality as well.
For sure.
And when nowadays judges like to talk a lot about the way things sound and touch and how you're able to make your instrument sound. And Jeff Osnemore is a big proponent about that. When you visit with him, he'll talk a lot about that. And it's just real important. And going back to all this is all linked together. Like what we do from the 6th to 7th grade, what we do to the 8th to the 9th grade. And to answer your question, what should they be able to do when they come to high school? Hopefully, produce a great rebound stroke. Yeah. And that we really like, and be able to play some accents and taps that we really like. And then we'll get it faster. We can get it faster through repetition. At
Bill
the high school
Bachman's going to get it faster.
Yeah, he's going to get it faster. And going around the track's going to get it faster too. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
We all know how to play that game. That's just reps.
Yeah.
But if they don't have the right sound, then when you rep it, you're just repping it wrong all the time. And so I want to just make sure that they have those qualities when they show up to the high school. I want them to have some experiences with percussion ensemble, and like I said, at the minimum they're going to have at least 7 percussion ensembles. Some of them this time are going to have close to 10 or 11, which is amazing. Yeah, it's awesome. But that's not typical. I'm going to go ahead and say that's not what we usually do. And then hopefully they come up with
how about like attitude and approach?
That's what I was going to say. I was trying to describe. Hopefully with a curiosity and inspiration and wonderment. I want them to come up with that. Like, man, this is really cool. I want to see what this is all about. I'm so interested about learning. I want them to be excited. Yeah. I don't want them to be hungry. Like, I guess this is what I'm supposed to do. Right. I want them to have some sort of interest, but excitement. Yeah, that's probably a good way to put it. Yeah. Maybe more so than anything else. Because if they have that, that's you gotta have that want, that desire. I've talked to a lot of people lately about I have a new syndrome. Really. COVID kind of kicked this off too, but it's called the late bloomer syndrome. Okay. And kids that don't really sound very good in middle school, and all of a sudden they start to figure it out in high school, and they sound really good. Right. Those are late bloomers. And I'm getting more and more of those these days. Sure. And it's okay. Yeah. I mean, I wish they would have bloomed in middle school, but you never give up on students. You never give up on students. No. I mean, I have students that you would think, some people would never give them a chance. Yeah. I tend to think that's one of my best qualities, is I never give up on a kid. Never. Love that. Never. And even if there's sound, and I'm telling you, I teach at Marcus. Everybody thinks, everybody at Marcus is no. I mean,
you're still putting in the work just like everybody else to get the kids
we put our pants on one leg at a time, just like everybody else. Yeah, we don't do anything different. Yeah, and I have to be patient with those kids that don't know how to do it. Sure. I mean, it's just one of those. And there's some years where we might have a little more talent, and there's some years where we don't. Yeah. But you can't sit around and go, woe is us. You gotta go fix it. Yeah. Because otherwise it will be woe is you. You know what I'm saying? So if you're gonna feel sorry for yourself, then that's probably what's gonna happen. So. But those kids, I think if I had one thing that they could come up with, it would be, how to produce a really good stroke, and understand the mechanics of how to do that, Awesome. And that doesn't happen. That's hard to do. Yeah. That's really hard to do. Tricky. I've had kids that still can't rebound the stick, and they've been with me for 3 years. Yeah. So, like I said, I couldn't do it till I was like almost 19 years old. Yeah. So I don't take it. That's what bewilders me about like some percussion educators. They're just, I think they kind of blow it off like, oh, that's easy. We can get my kids to rebound. I'm like, it's not that easy at all. Yeah. It's probably the hardest thing to do is to get the stick to rebound. once again, that's why I wrote the book the way I did.
Yeah.
Because it was the hardest thing to do.
Yeah.
So if it's the hardest thing to do, then we got to spend the most time doing it.
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll get it done, you know. So anyways, that's kind of my philosophy on in a nutshell on teaching my beginners is I want them to not experience the difficulties of not having that sound, because that's not gonna go well when they play mallets. It's not going to go well when they play timpani or drum set. They're just not going to sound like they need to sound because of the way they play,
Yeah.
So big proponent of that.
Cool. We're going to pause real quick, and then I have one more question to ask you. Okay. All right.
Check.
There we go. So my final question for you before we go into some of our other segments, I know Shannon has one more. And I heard this from someone, you visited a college percussion pedagogy class at Texas A&M Commerce, and I heard this from one of the students. And feel free to share this, or if this is something you want to keep secret, then that's fine too. But I'm very curious to hear.
No.
I'm very curious to hear about your recent, the way you changed how you pick beginners. Because the way you do it now is very different than the way you used to do it. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure.
May not be right for everybody, but I just want to hear
No. It's not that big of a secret, because I've seen a lot of people how they do it, and everybody has a way of doing it. There really is not a correct way to pick beginners.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of great ways to do it. So you got to do what works for you. I just did what I had to do at the time. This kind of ties into the COVID thing.
Sure.
Prior to that, I would meet with my kids individually for 5 or 10 minutes. I think most people were doing that. And I go through pretty much what everybody does. I do a little rhythm test. I do a little coordination test. And maybe put some sticks in their hands, and then obviously not a cognitive test, but how they pay attention and how they interact.
Yeah.
So it's basically that's it. There's like 10 points on each one, 40. Not a big deal. I try to keep it simple steps. I mean, everything I try to do is simple. I think if we try to make this more complicated, we don't need to. We're teaching kids how to drum, man. We're not like this isn't.
It's not rocket surgery.
This is not rocket surgery. So a lot of this is just using your instincts. A lot of it's instincts and your natural reaction. But, anyways, I know what you're alluding to as far as what I've done differently. So when COVID hit, we weren't able to use to contact with our beginners. So the first year that came out. And it got really late in the summer of, I guess that was 2020. And so the band directors at the middle schools were like just putting kids in classes like this is not going to turn out well. Yeah. And guess what? It didn't turn out well. And so the next year, we were not allowed to go down or to go down to the elementaries, or for them to come and do it in person. So I'd heard some people have done some videos, and so I thought, how's that going to work? Like, I don't know how to do this on a video. Didn't make any sense to me. So I thought about it, and I was like, well, what's most important to me is that I can see what they can do, and this needs to be in real time.
Yeah.
So what I did was I created a 5-minute video. It's 5 minutes on the dot.
Nice.
And so it's a video of me talking to the student and going through what I would tell them if they were in person. And so what they have to do is they have to send me a copy of the video of them watching the video.
Wow.
And so when I get it, it's in real time.
Yeah.
So everything they do
You're basically a hologram.
Yes. Basically. And so, I mean, it's not that mind-breaking or groundbreaking, but I mean, it helped me because I could hear the kids' rhythm. Yeah. I could tell, like I would play some rhythms on my knee, and then I would pause for them to interact. And so they knew what to do because I demonstrated it for them before I did it. And it was done with a metronome, of course. Mm-hmm. And so I did that. Then I did some coordination things where they had to demonstrate their coordination. And then I had them kind of do some things with their wrist. And what was interesting is like there would be a kid, you got all kinds of things. Like one kid did it in their living room, and and there's like a dog that's just running around, crazy
Zoomies.
stuff.
The dog has the zoomies.
Yeah, it's going nuts. And I'm watching the dog, and the kid's like staring at the video. I'm like, wow, he's got great concentration. I'm watching the dog, and like I wonder if the kid's gonna watch the dog.
That's a paid dog actor to do that, to get him ahead.
To see if I could notice he was paying attention. But he did a really good job. And then one girl did hers. I guess she was kind of artsy. She did hers out. It was like at a park or something.
Oh, nice.
The wind's blowing, her hair's blowing, and it's like out in the park, and you could hear people talking and stuff. And she's really glued to the video, watching and stuff. So I mean, I just throw that in there because, you can tell the kids' level of attention.
Yeah.
Because they have to watch the video and they have to stay with me because otherwise they're not going to
miss
be able to.
something.
And you can't edit the video because I would know if you edit the video.
Right.
So, long story short, I did that the year before last. That's the group too. By the way, I was taking the TMEA, and so I had that year. This was the year before last. I had 30. I think it was a total of like 36 beginners at 3 different schools.
Yeah.
And out of that, I bet I got about 31 of them right.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It was amazing.
It's a great
And then I did it
percentage.
again. I did it again this last year,
Uh-huh.
and I had the same result.
Nice.
And I'm like, the time that I'm saving.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I can watch those videos really fast.
You're in Jamaica, like just chilling.
They're 5 minutes each,
Yeah.
so I could do like almost 20 of them in an hour.
Yeah.
And so I was going in person, and I was getting like 4 or 5 done in an hour.
Wow.
And taking up a lot of personal time, which that's the only way I knew how to do it.
Sure. Yeah.
So I guess this is the way I'm gonna kind of go until something breaks or doesn't work anymore. But
Some kids get to have a green screen. They're gonna get someone else, some professional drummer's gonna be doing their hands. You
Yeah,
have to change
well,
it at that point.
I stumbled onto this. This is not something I knew. I'd heard some other people doing it. I think maybe Matt Moore did it.
Yeah.
But I didn't kind of watch his, but I heard about what he did.
Sure.
And maybe he does the same thing. I don't know. I just know that this was what worked for me, and it turned out really good. And talk about reinventing yourself at a late age. It's kind of what I did.
Yeah.
I kind of reinvented what I could do, and it really worked out well till I think I may still do this a couple of more years and do the same way. Now I will say I do meet with my beginners prior to when school starts for 4 days for an hour each day. And so if something is, if I missed really poorly on something,
Sure.
I have time to fix it still, you know what I'm saying?
Nice.
But it's kind of worked out. So
Cool.
yeah, you're right. You did hear correctly.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I really appreciate that. What's your final question?
It's been a amazing interview. I was just so cool to
100%,
hear
yeah.
all these perspectives from, I'm sure you're going to address this humbly, but Kennan, you're a legend in Texas percussion education. You really are.
I've just been teaching for a long time.
Oh man,
I think it's part of the definition of legendary.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. There's a time.
There's a
Okay,
time for it
okay,
as well.
okay.
But you're also good at what
Yeah,
you do.
I mean, I remember looking up to you since I was in high school myself, and it's been cool to, as I've grown up and older, to have a bit of a professional relationship with you over the years. The first time you remember me from one session to the next and say, "Oh, Mr. Jacobs," mind blown, heart melted, everything. So one of the things about this is, we're all hearing that, the students at Marcus put their pants on one leg at a time. You follow your book and you think you follow it sequentially, and you don't expect too much of the kids, and yet you garner the kind of success that has put Marcus on the map. You've been doing it for a long time. How have you garnered the stamina to do it for such a long time at such a high level? Is it just something magical that Kennan Wylie has in himself, or are there some other things that you could help us garner that same sort of stamina to do this?
Yeah, stamina, man. That's like that's
Sounds like a snare drum solo.
yeah. It does sound like a snare drum.
It's a Marty Hurley snare drum solo, actually.
There you go. That ties in.
So I thought it was Mitch Markovich.
Oh, it might be. Okay, you call.
Let's make sure we get the record straight
Time
on
out. Let me
stamina.
Google that.
Yeah.
I'm pretty
Mitch
sure
Markovich, it's your solo
it's definitely
stamina.
Mitch's. It definitely is Mitch's.
And
My
the
bad.
winner.
Yeah, and the winner.
Yeah.
And Just Friends. That's a duet. That's really good. Have you ever played that? It's a really cool duet.
yeah,
Just
nice.
Friends. And then Tornado.
Yep.
from the series. Anyways, we digress. So stamina, I think, wow, that might take a while to answer, but I think that I don't know. I think there's several factors that contribute to it. I think one is, you have to love what you do. Obviously, that's kind of the whole podcast, the dream job. You have to love what you do, which I do love what I do. I love working with all age groups, 6 all the way through 12. I love music. I love to play music. I love to teach music. I love to play music with my students. I love to listen to my students play music. So there's all these combinations that get me going. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I think everything that I do in my personal music makes me enjoy teaching music more. I think everything that I do with teaching makes my personal playing music more. Everything is just bounces off everything else. And so maybe that has something to do with the stamina, because I think if I just taught and I did nothing else, I didn't write, I didn't play, I don't know if I would have the same stamina. Yeah. For me, this is me personally. I think if I just played and I didn't teach, I don't know if I'd have the stamina to do that. I think I am who I am because of all those things together. I don't think I would be the same if one of those aspects wasn't there. Like this past weekend, I played Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. And so, and without that, I don't, that's just a part of me, that's just what, and I have friends who are amazing musicians, and I just am in awe of them sometimes, listening to them, or if I get a chance to play with them. And that just, when I go teach, that just kind of stays with me, and that makes the teaching more fun, thinking about those guys when I teach. And then when I go play, I think, and they'll ask me, do you have any kids that can play really good? I'm like, yeah, I kind of do, Yeah. And so, and then that makes me, enjoy what I do. It's really weird how all it kind of just blends together. And, as far as the work ethic, I guess that's just something that was handed to from my parents. Family, work ethic, always, being there, always doing the thing. I think part of that is important, having a good work ethic. But I enjoy what I do. I mean, I think it's. The thing that'll stop me will be probably something physical, like if I can't walk, Right. And I'm being serious on that. I was talking to our principal, Marcus. He was a band director, and his dad was a band director too. And he told me his dad retired because he just couldn't walk much anymore. Yeah. And and I wonder if I'll get to a point where just physically I don't enjoy, it's too much time, because as you get older, it becomes it doesn't become hard. You just got to be careful. You got to be a little wiser about it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, I stand up a lot, but sometimes if I see a stool, I'm going to go grab the stool, I'm going to sit down. And you have to be smart about that. That's what's going to give you another year or two. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. If you're just running around, when I was doing it in the 90s and all the way after that, I mean, you can't keep it up that long. I mean, it's just the way it works. I mean, I was talking to Bill about that, Bachman. I mean, the same thing. I mean, we're not getting any younger, but we can keep doing what we're doing if we just be wise about it. But the stamina, as far as an interest level, I don't think that'll ever go away. I don't think my interest level always goes. I'm always interested about what guys like you are doing. And I don't post a lot, but I watch a lot on social media. I watch a lot and I listen a lot, and I get inspiration by watching other groups. Yeah. If it's not you guys, it's somebody else. Whether it's high school or whether it's college or drum corps or professional musicians. I don't think that'll ever go away. I don't think that will ever leave. Even when I decide that I've had enough, and I can't do it full time, I still think I'll be watching everybody, and I'll still be cheering everybody on, watching, and that interest will never go away, and maybe that's why the stamina has stayed there. But I'm not gonna lie, there's some days where at the end of rehearsal I'll sit down like, man,
it's tough.
I don't know if I don't know. You just, we're having this interview like in June, which is one of our more chill times. But if we were
by design.
Yeah, but if we were doing this podcast like in the middle of October, we might be talking about a lot of different things.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point.
We might look a lot different, and our tone might be a little different.
Absolutely.
But I'll say something that I notice about people that retire and get out of the business. I will say that something that's common about all of them is that they look different. They look different. They look refreshed. You know what I'm saying? This is a hard business to be in. It's not for the weak. It physically it's difficult, and mentally, emotionally, it's difficult. And I know Jeff Osdemore will talk a little bit about that in his podcast. And you, in order to stay with it, you have to have balance. You got to have balance. And I'm not so sure I've always had balance, but the older I'm getting, I'm learning how important that is. And I try my best at this point. I think when we're all younger, we think we're invincible, and we think we can do this forever. At the speed we're doing it forever.
Right.
And you realize, no, you start to have kids of your own, and that's going to change a lot of things. Yeah. And as they get older, that's going to start to change a lot of things. And as they get involved in activities, that's going to change things.
Yep.
And so it's amazing to me, even band directors that do, they do what we do, but full-time head band directors.
Yeah.
That's a grind,
Sure.
It's a dream job. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to bring down the job, but there is a balance that you got to have, and in order to have that stamina, you gotta keep it balanced. If you don't, you're gonna. And I think that has to do balance not just from from a life standpoint, but balance from a musical standpoint.
Yeah.
Like if all I did was drumline from here to April, I'm not so sure I would have the stamina.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But when we have percussion ensemble, it's such a it's like a breath
of
new
fresh air.
It's like
change of pace.
Yeah, it's like a new season.
Yeah.
Which it is.
Yeah.
And then vice versa. When we go back to drumline, everybody's like, yeah, let's go to drumline. And so that definitely helps a lot. You know what I'm saying? Have that musical balance where it's not always just the one thing. Like in the fall, we're doing drumline, but we're still doing all region band.
Yeah.
And maybe you're getting ready for Midwest.
Yep.
You're going to have some great balance this fall.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Well, it'll be busy,
One
but
thing to the next and keep it fresh.
But from a musical balance, you're going to be very, very satisfied.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? That'll be awesome.
Cool. Well, Kennan, thank you so much for coming on and being here with us today. We've got a couple more segments, but just to kind of wrap up all the, not serious quote unquote things we talked about, but all the meat and potatoes, as you say, of the podcast. Just really appreciate your perspective.
Thank you for having me.
I know the millions of listeners we have are going to appreciate your perspective as well.
Don't overestimate yourself. Maybe 3 or 4 million.
I would love to see those numbers.
Yeah, for real.
We've got some fun segments that we've come up with, and every podcast we kind of change it up a little bit. So I've got 2 today. Shannon, are you doing good idea, bad idea?
I got a good idea, bad idea.
Okay, sweet. So I'll start with my first one, and then you can do it, and we'll end with my last one. So this segment's called Kennan's Favorites. All right.
Okey-dokey.
So this is kind of spitfire. Just just first thing that comes to your mind, just for the people, hear a little bit more about you. There's some musical ones in here, some not musical ones. So
Gotcha.
You're just gonna tell us your favorite. All right. So favorite Brad Pitt movie.
Ocean's 14?
I don't know that they have 14.
Ocean's 11.
Ocean's 11.
Ocean's 11. Sorry,
Great
man.
movie.
Yeah.
Great
Yeah.
movie. Awesome.
Sorry.
That's okay. Favorite card game.
Card game?
Card game.
Card game. Probably a blackjack.
Nice. Okay. Favorite rudiment.
Petty fla fla.
Can you demonstrate?
Check it.
Thank you for that. Favorite all-time drum corps show.
Rocky Point Holiday, the Garfield Cadets.
Heck yeah. Go Cadets.
It was Garfield Cadets back
then. Nice. Favorite fast food joint?
Chick-fil-A.
Nice. Favorite major scale?
I'm going to go with the, call this one out a lot. I really like the A flat.
Love it. Like the pattern in that one. Favorite sport to watch on TV?
Cowboys. Football.
Not even football. Just start with straight up Cowboys. Okay, favorite movie trilogy of all time?
Movie trilogy. I guess it'd be Star Wars.
Nice.
There you go. Nice. We're big Star Wars fans here. Okay, last one for favorites. Favorite Texas history legend?
Davy Crockett.
Heck yeah. So, not many people know this, but he is actually born in Tennessee.
I did not know that.
But we can all agree that he is a Texas legend.
He is a Texas legend.
All right. Well, thank you. There's Kennan's favorites.
No, those are interesting.
Yeah.
All right, I have some questions for you.
Okay.
These are mostly a product of my ADHD. I can't, I'm always thinking about crazy things.
Okay.
So, good idea, bad idea. That's the answer. Or you can expound upon the answer if you'd like. All right, first question. Good idea, bad idea. Cooking bacon shirtless.
Bad idea.
All right.
A lot of splatter in bacon.
Exactly. That's what. Yeah, I think so. All right. More quad drummers on the snare line than snare drums.
More quad drummers on the snare line.
No. Like more quads in the battery than snares.
Oh. Bad idea. Bill Bachman.
I think one of those videos we watched, you might have had more quads than snares.
I thought that was a good idea.
Example, yeah.
All right. Using stands in the lot, at the warm-up lot. Like drum stands in the warm-up lot.
For a drum show or for a band show?
Or band show.
Band show, bad idea.
Bad idea.
Drum show, good idea.
That's a two-part answer.
Two-part answer. All right, fantastic. All right, good idea, bad idea. Camping in the woods in hopes to catch a Sasquatch.
That's a good idea if you want to catch one.
You're going to have to be there.
Yeah, you're going to have to be there. You got to be there.
All right, cool. Last one here. Good idea, bad idea. Owning a truck as a percussion director.
It's an excellent idea.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Yeah, cool. We schlepp a lot of stuff in our trucks.
Oh my gosh, when I got a truck 2 or 3 years ago, it just changed the game.
What do you have?
Ford Ranger,
Okay.
2021.
How much can you get in there? How many temps can you get there? All 5?
2,
We
maybe
can
3.
get 2.
Yeah.
In my bed, 150. You can get all 4.
Yeah.
Oh wow, you got the
A
150.
little smaller
Yeah.
truck. Yeah. Shannon's a big truck guy.
Y'all need to get you like each of one of you get a little trailer. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just
We
cart
can
it
do
around.
that. Yeah, we can do that. We probably should do that.
We really need
Where's
to do
your?
that.
How far is your rehearsal from? Do you have to go far to rehearse?
Literally a quarter mile.
That's a long way.
Literally, I'm not even joking. From the band hall doors to the grid, down behind the stadium. We could show it to you on our way out. It's a quarter mile.
Wow.
Yeah. So we finally have invested in some big storage units, like you see at like a shipping dock.
Like a pod.
pod- exactly.
Big couple pods. So this year's the first year we're gonna really have full access to them. And man, we were even loading the semi down there a couple years in a row. Like rehearsal's over, we're not gonna push everything back. We're gonna be back here tomorrow, so we load the semi.
Yeah.
No joke. So
So
getting
were
better
you
at that.
rolling everything down or putting it on a? Were we rolling everything down?
Yes, mostly yes. So now we'll like store some speakers in there and the things that don't need to come back up to the school. And again, with like Midwest, it's like some of our stuff's gonna have to come back up every day.
This would have been a good opportunity to say, hey, we need a set of marimbas that we can keep here,
Yeah.
and we can roll the other ones down there
Yep.
and tear those up. So we'll keep the brand new 5 octaves here,
Yep.
and they'll be our good ones, and then we'll just roll the other ones down there.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, we'll share this with our stakeholders who are in charge of that.
I think Varner, if I'm not mistaken, so at UTA when they redid the auditorium or something, Irons Recital Hall, whatever that was called. And so when they did it, they did the elevator. They had to take the marimbas, still take the marimbas up the elevator, and they have to take them apart. So before they did the construction on doing that, Varner said, "Well, it's okay if we use the elevator, but we're gonna need marimbas for up there and down here."
Yeah.
So they got like 5 of those
The Yamahas.
Yamahas,
Wow.
man, and that's how we got them.
Yep, I remember that.
How smart was that?
Using
man?
your situation to your advantage.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
Oh yeah.
So they got like 5 five octave Yamahas, those Keiko Abe ones.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh.
The top of the top, man.
Yeah.
And so they got those because they couldn't. They said they didn't want to roll their marimbas up with their all the time.
Yeah, so like when they redid irons, they were like, "Yep,
That's
genius. We got 4 or 5 of the 5 octaves down there just for that space, just for concert. They just live down there."
So when did you go to UTA?
That was 04 to about 09.
Okay. All right. So the Osdemore was there at that point.
Osdemore there was 02 and 03.
Oh, okay.
Yakis got there when
Yakis.
I got there. Yeah.
I got you. Yeah.
Yep.
And so you weren't there when Andy got there. When did Andy get there? Was it
2012 or 13 or after
It's
that?
a little
'Cause
after
he was still
that.
at TCU in the
Yeah.
2011
Yeah,
time
and then
period,
he
I
was
think.
at I think Andy's year might have been 2013 is what it kind of feels like that right.
He was there when I got here,
Yeah.
at least.
Yeah,
That was
for sure.
2017,
Yeah,
so
for
before
sure.
that.
Yeah.
So Shannon, are you? Do y'all have are you a full-time assistant?
Nope, I'm a lesson guy.
Are y'all trying to get like a full-time assistant?
Every year.
Every
Yeah,
year
work in progress.
they've talked about it for I don't know how many years.
See, I don't think we're ever going to get one because we have 5 high schools,
Yeah.
and they're just not going to do it, man. I mean, we have what's called a percussion assistant, but it's not that much. It's like it's better than nothing.
It's like a para position.
It's not even a para, dude.
Wow.
I mean, paras get at least halftime almost.
Yeah,
Paras make almost like 20, 25.
Yeah.
I mean, ours is like a 10,000, 12,000 thing.
Oh,
It's
wow.
not even. I mean, it's like a token. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it helps, but it's not. I hate saying it's a assistant because it's not. You know,
Right.
it's not even it's like a little contract job. You know, they try to call it something that it's really not. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Yeah.
The ones at Frisco, those para jobs,
Those are nice.
Those are legit.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
35, 40.
And
Yeah.
that has 11, 12 high schools now, so they kind of
Yeah.
got it figured out
Yeah.
up there.
I mean, Mike Lemish has a full-time one. Did you know that? He has a full-time
Assistant.
Full-time.
What school is that?
That's Argyle.
Oh, wow.
So it's him and then another percussion. They have 2 full-time percussion instructors.
Wow.
It's full-time. It's not half-time.
That's crazy.
And I want to say there was somebody else that made that move. Maybe it's Capel coming to mind, possibly.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
We're going to have Doug and Patricia on so we can ask them about that.
I mean, it wouldn't be them, but I think maybe, ask them if the other one is full-time or not. And maybe it's just a full-time and a half-time. But I know they have some kind of, they have at least a half-time. And maybe, I want to think that one went to full-time, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I don't know that guy's name again. What's his name?
Randall Wynn?
I don't know Randall Wynn at all, but I just know him when I see him.
Well, maybe if we had more assistant full-time directors, we wouldn't have to spend so much time making these podcasts in hope of getting famous.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah. Although we certainly love having great people like you.
It's fun. I mean, I like to talk shop, but I wish I wish we had full-time guys. That would solve a lot of problems. But you know, it's a miracle. It really is that we have all the full-time jobs that we have, man.
Yeah, no kidding.
Because I'm telling you, like in the mid-'90s, those didn't exist.
Yeah.
Well, even to
at
this day,
all.
around the country, they don't exist.
Yeah. I
really-
mean,
we're-
Texas is,
yeah.
is far and away, the place that has the most positions.
Oh yeah.
I mean, somebody needs to do a research on that, see how many there are. But I think even in the Metroplex, there's probably close to 100.
Oh,
maybe.
for sure.
You know what
Yeah,
I'm saying?
maybe even more across the whole state.
Yeah.
So
And then you go to Austin, they have them, and
Houston and San Antonio.
So everybody's pretty much has a percussion specialist.
Yeah.
There's still a few that are percussion band directors
Yeah.
you still run into those.
Some people really like doing that, though.
Yeah, some people do.
Just kind of to each their own.
Like Ben Moffmer, he had a band, I think.
Yeah.
You know
Or
what I'm
John Brennan.
Yeah, John Brennan.
Yeah, he's the director of bands.
Well, now he's not really a percussion guy. He's full time. He's like the head dude.
Yeah.
Dude, yeah.
And that's crazy, man. Like, I'm like, holy smokes. I remember seeing him the first fall.
Yeah.
And he looked like he got hit by a train. I saw him at the Plano contest.
Yeah.
And he's just walking around in a daze. I said, "You okay?" He goes, "Yeah." He He goes, man, just getting used to this job. I'm like, dang. And some other guy was warm. He was just, he wasn't doing anything with the drumline. He was just walking around. Yeah. He looks much better now. Like it just took him a while to kind of
settle in.
Yeah, to figure it out. Like I think it was like a lot. He wasn't quite ready for that. Mm-hmm. But since I've seen him the times after that, I think now he's done 2 complete years. Yeah. So he seems to be kind of in it now. Kind of knows what he's doing.
So we've got one more segment that I prepared specifically for you. So this segment's called Professor Kennan Wylie.
Professor.
So you're gonna put on your professor hat here.
You got it.
And I just got some silly but serious questions for you. So my first question is, why glasses over contacts?
I tried contacts at a gig one time at Strictly Taboo, if you know where that club is. It's a really smoky club. And this was back in the early 90s, and I had them. And we were playing, and I thought my eyeballs were going to catch on fire. And so at the end of the set, I went out into the back room, and I yanked them out, and I put my glasses back. I said, I'm never doing that again for the rest of my life.
Wow.
Yeah, I had a bad experience.
I knew that was going to lead to a funny story.
Yeah.
Okay, my next question is, and we kind of touched on this earlier, the importance of the DB90, not only for rehearsal efficiency, but also for the history of percussion education.
What's the importance of it?
Yeah.
Well, it's the rock. Yeah. I mean, like, gotta have it.
Gotta have it.
I can't. I will tell you, we didn't have that when I marched drum corps.
Right.
And if you go back and you listen to tapes from like the early '80s, all of our rolls they release like after the corps hits the release, you hear crack, like the release of all our rolls are like a half a count late.
Yeah.
That's because we didn't rehearse with a metronome. We didn't even have a metronome.
Yeah. Listen to make it clean to the end.
I know that's hard to believe for everybody out there to listen to hear, but I mean we didn't have Dr. Beats and we didn't have Lone Rangers. None of that existed at all, man. And so I marched next to John Wooten, and John would just tap it off, and we would just play. We just play, And awesome. It was clean, but it wasn't really always in time.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Okay, next question. Have you ever said this out loud to any student in any context? The Kennan Wylie School of Music.
Never.
Never?
Never.
Okay.
Never.
I'm guilty of that, so props to you. All right, what is it like to have more of the letter N than vowels in your first name?
Confusing for most people.
Okay, great. And then follow up.
Wait. But okay, go ahead.
Follow up. What is it like to have more vowels than consonants in your last name, assuming Y is a vowel, which, as we all know, can be very tricky sometimes?
That's a little simpler, easier to spell. But I will tell you, anybody that knows me that really, 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 really well, and that's traveled in my car when we go to Chick-fil-A, my favorite restaurant, fast food.
Yeah.
When we go in there, my name at Chick-fil-A is Steve.
You don't even bother with Kennan.
Yeah, I don't bother with my name. It's Steve.
Yeah, Steve.
You can't mess up Steve.
Oh, yeah.
That's hilarious.
That's awesome.
So anytime we go over, my kids look at me like, what are you doing? I said, because they're going to screw it up. So I go, Steve. Order for Steve.
Yeah, Steve. Maybe Steven if you're feeling a little more.
No, just Steve.
No. Cool. That's funny. Well, that kind of leads me to my last couple questions. What's your Subway order?
I do the cold cut combo 6-inch.
Nice. And then what's? Go ahead. Oh, I thought you said something. Sorry. And then my last question is similar. What's your Jimmy John's order?
Oh, I like the Turkey Tom.
Nice.
Turkey Tom.
Cool. I didn't come up with a great final question, so that's the last question in that segment. But thank you for your answer, Professor Kennan Wylie.
Well, Chick-fil-A, I do like the number one, Chick-fil-A.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's a good one. Deluxe or just?
Nope, just regular old standby
Steve
number one.
Likes
that's right.
Number one. Chick-fil-A.
Remember when Chick-fil-A's, they used to have them in the malls only?
Yeah.
They didn't have freestanding Chick-fil-A's.
Yep.
They only have them in the malls with the Orange Julius. Remember that?
I remember that.
Yeah, I was back
I haven't had Orange Julius in several years. It's been a minute.
Anyways.
Well,
trivia talk.
Kennan, thank you so much for being on today.
Been a pleasure, man.
It's been a lot of fun, and I just hope that I know a lot of people are going to just really enjoy hearing your stories and your perspective, and you really are a legend in our community, and we're so thankful
appreciate the kind words
that you're able to come on and do the podcast with us today.
Best of luck to you guys this fall, and everybody out there have a great fall season and spring season, and Yeah, let's have fun.
You as well. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today for this awesome interview. Again, if you want to follow us, we're on Apple Podcasts and Spotify Podcasts, as well as YouTube and Facebook, and TikTok recently as well. So please make sure to follow us on all of those social media outlets, and have a great one, and we'll see you next time.
See you later.
Share the show.